You're good?
Yep.
All right, well, we will call this meeting to order then. Having just finished closed session, we're returning back to open session. And first go to approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the 3 sets of meetings?
Move to
October
approve.
1, 5th, and 6th.
Move to approve all the minutes.
Second.
Is there any discussion, changes, omissions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Next, we'll need an approval of the agenda, which should be as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And next is public comments. I believe we have 8 people here in person for public comment. Do you have a list? You're going to have the first one. All we ask is that you state your name and either your address or relationship to the district.
Hi, my name is Greg Lake. I live on Naminger Valley Cove. I have 2 daughters. One's in high school and one's in 6th grade at the intermediate school. And I'm here I'm representing the Waunakee Wave. And thank all of you for putting facility usage on this agenda. I appreciate it very much. We've currently been swimming outside, and time is becoming more of an essence for the club to continue with the weather changing as it is. So I've been here 3 years. I currently serve on the board of directors at Wisconsin Swimming, and we feel that if you're going to try to open anything, or when you get to that point, the swimming pool would be the prime place you would start. Because of the CDC and their guidelines stating that swimming pools are safe, don't transmit disease. We've been operating safely since June 1st. Granted, it's outdoors. We've had no incidents. All of our swimmers, I have a high school freshman. She got the how they're running the pool now, and basically everything they're doing is what we've been doing all summer long, even outdoors. All of our swimmers line up 5 minutes before, ready to go. We check them out, they go in, they get out, they walk out in their suits, and that's it. So we feel like we can safely use the pool. We're willing to go above, beyond, whatever needs to happen in order to continue on with our training and our season. I understand that there are many things that I wouldn't even probably think of, that you guys all think of, that we would need to address. I know safety's one, costs, staffing, those are other huge issues. I can't staff for you, obviously. The club would be more than willing to discuss helping to defray costs of staff, of extra cleaning supplies, putting it on for a monthly bill, or whatever it is, to allow us in. We're operating now with about 75% of our normal capacity. And knowing we go inside, and if we go inside, and where we go inside, that'll go down. I mean, we're realists. We know we're not going to be able to run a normal swim thing. We're just asking the opportunity to allow us to continue, to allow these young student athletes, which almost all go to Waunakee schools, to continue on with their dreams. And as most of you, if you don't know or have known some, swimmers are quite passionate, obsessive, and they will do about anything to swim. I mean, including last weekend at 38 degrees outside in wind and rain, or 2 weekends ago, whenever that was. We were out there. So just looking forward to seeing if we can get in when that possibility may come, so we can plan and whatever those things are. That's about all I had, really. So thank you for your time. Thank you all for all you do. I can't imagine what you guys go through. And I know this is not a priority. Getting my kids back in school and everyone else's in classrooms are the priority. I understand. We feel this can be done safely without taking away from them. But thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
We ask that you state your name and your relationship to the school district, if you can, first.
My name is Claire Forey. I am a 4th grader at Prairie Elementary. This is my 2nd year as a swimmer on the Waunakee Wave swim team. I've tried lots of other sports like dance, soccer, and tennis, but swimming is my favorite. I'm here today to ask you to allow us to use the pool at the high school for our swim team practices. The CDC said that coronavirus does not spread in pools. Recently, it was 49 degrees and raining. My mom gave me the choice to stay home or to go to practice. I chose to go to practice. It was very cold, but soon all of the outdoor pools will be closed and we will no longer be able to swim. When I swim, everything feels a little more normal and happy. Please give us a chance to get back in the pool. We will continue to follow the safety plan that we have been following this summer, including wearing masks when we are out of the pool and only having one swimmer in a lane. Thank you for considering.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. We just asked that you provide your name and your relationship to the district when you start.
Hello, thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. My name is Natalie Kessler and I'm a 5th grader at the Waunakee Intermediate School. I've been swimming on the Waunakee Wave swim team for 2 years. I love to swim. When I joined the Wave, I joined a group of dedicated athletes. We train hard year-round to compete at a high level. My teammates have also become some of my best friends. During COVID, the ability to practice with my teammates has helped me stay physically and mentally healthy. With the warm weather ending, we're no longer able to swim outside. That's why I ask you to please consider reopening the aquatic center. Swimming has been identified by health experts as a low-risk activity. My teammates and I have done a great job this summer following health guidelines like wearing masks on the pool deck, keeping distance, and staying home if we don't feel well. Reopening the aquatic center would help more than just wave swimmers. It would give other community members a way to get good exercise. Swimming is important to me, my team, and our community. I ask you to please consider this when deciding if you will reopen the aquatic center. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I am Emily Berger, and I am 12 years old, and I am a 7th grader at Waunakee Middle School. My family recently moved here to Waunakee from Richmond, Virginia. When I first moved here, it was hard for me because I wasn't swimming like I had been in Virginia, and I wasn't seeing my friends or making any new friends. But the very first day I started swimming for Waunakee Wave, my heart felt full again. All the puzzle pieces were being brought back together. The coaches were amazing, and they made sure everyone knew that I was a part of the team now. So far, every person I have met at swimming has been so kind, and I am friends with an abundance of people now. During COVID, things are harder to do, such as making friends, but I have found a way to do, and so has everyone else. At my old club in Virginia, we practiced inside even during COVID-19, and so far it hasn't been a problem. And every rule they had at my old club, Coach Greg has been applying for outdoor practices. We wear masks right until we hop into the water. We social distance when we are in the pool and on land, and we do not touch each other. If a swimmer doesn't feel well, then they are not allowed to show up to practice. The coaches also wear masks all of practice and social distance with the swimmers. Swimming is a gift that was given to me when I was very young, and so it is something that is part of my life. If we are not able to swim this winter, multiple things will be lost. The swimmers will lose something they love. Also, swimming is helping me and other kids socialize. Without swimming, we will lose many of our socializing skills because the only place we'll be talking to other people would be online over some sort of social media platform. The coaches will lose their jobs, and many other things will be lost, including some kids' love and joy of sports and pushing yourself to your limits but having fun while doing it. But you can stop all this from happening by letting Waunakee Wave practice at the high school. I would like for you to take all of the words I have spoken this evening into consideration when you are making your decision. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful evening and stay safe. And once again, I would like to thank the whole school board for everything you have done for all the kids here in Waunakee. And I'd like to thank you for all the hard work you do for everyone in this community. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Grace Blitz. I live at 5846 Woodland Drive, and I am a sophomore at Waunakee High School. I am here from Waunakee Wave in support of opening the high school pool facility to community groups. Thank you all for your hard work for our schools and including this on the agenda. I am a sophomore at Waunakee High School and a varsity member of the high school swim team. I am an honor roll student, class vice president, and a member of many other clubs. During the off-season, I also swim with the community team Waunakee Wave. I've been swimming with Wave for 7 years and it's helped shape who I am today. Swim is a grueling sport. It requires countless hours of practice, self-discipline, and mental toughness. I can definitely say it is not for everyone. But most of us who swim can't imagine not swimming, and it shows. 100% of Wave's eligible high school students also compete on the boys and girls JV and varsity swim teams, and many are or are training to become lifeguards and instructors for district swim programs. We are proud to be positive role models and provide a valuable service to our community. Wave has helped us be ready for this. Our nonprofit team is open to all Waunakee students, and we have some from every school in the district. Swimming from a young age has helped me build life skills that I use every day. Confidence, commitment, perseverance, time management, sportsmanship, the list goes on. Since swim is considered a safe, low-risk sport, we've been practicing outside since early summer, often up before sunrise, braving 40-degree temperatures. It has taken a lot of dedication and following new rules, but we have been so grateful to spend time safely with teammates, get a break from our stress, and continue to train in the sport that is so important to us. Thank you for recently opening the pool to high school swimmers for scheduled lap swim. It's been amazing for some of us to feel a little bit closer to normal during these times. We appreciate everything the board, athletic department, and aquatic center did to give us this opportunity. I respectfully ask that you also please open the pool to local community groups like Waunakee Wave. We are a responsible team of kids and supportive parents who are ready, willing, and able to comply with all district health and safety procedures. We know we can't swim if we don't. With most grades currently being virtual and most of our lives on hold, we would all benefit from this routine, structured, normal time as possible to stay physically active and mentally positive in a safe way. We realize you are faced with so many challenging issues, and this is only one thing on your list, but I respectfully ask you to please open the high school pool facility to local community groups. Thank you for your consideration and time and efforts on behalf of Waunakee.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a couple others that were emailed in to be read at the meeting. First is from Brittany Hoffman, the head coach for Waunakee DeForest High School Gymnastics. Mr. Gutenberg and the Waunakee Community School Board of Education members. I am writing because, like you, I want to see the students in our schools maintain a sense of community while also staying safe during the COVID-19 pandemic. It is my belief that the Waunakee DeForest High School Gymnastics program can not only help students feel that sense of belonging, but that it can do so in a safe manner, abiding by all state, county, and school mandates. Unlike many other sports, gymnastics is no contact. Therefore, maintaining a minimum of 6 feet separation between individuals at all times is especially feasible. Additionally, it is our practice to separate gymnasts into 3 groups or cohorts, further minimizing the likelihood of exposure. In order to maximize this benefit, we are prepared to hold 2 separate practices within our allotted practice time, limiting athlete exposure even more. Using this practice model will also allow us to comply with Dane County's group size mandate. In order to prevent exposure between cohorts, we will sanitize the equipment after each group has finished that event for the day. We are also able to limit each event to 1 cohort per practice if necessary. As for the additional materials gymnasts may need to practice, such as chalk, spray bottle, tape, etc., each gymnast will be required to carry around a backpack containing these items for their individual use only. Our program is willing to use our funds to help support the purchase of these items if need be. The one challenge we foresee needing to overcome this season would be setting up and taking down of our equipment, as this will be quite difficult to do in a safe manner while maintaining 6 feet of separation. However, if other sports are either unable to safely hold practice or if they are able to practice in other district areas, we would ask that we be allowed to keep our gymnastics equipment up. This would ensure the gymnast's safety both against COVID-19 as well as injury. Thank you for your consideration on this matter and all that you are doing to keep our students and community safe during this time. Please do not hesitate to contact me at Gymnastics Waunakee K-12 email with any questions. Again, Brittany Hoffman, head coach of the Waunakee and DeForest High School Gymnastics. Next is from Lorraine Stotts. Dear Waunakee School Board, I am writing to you today as a member of the Waunakee girls varsity basketball team. I am currently a senior at the high school and wanted to voice the Waunakee girls basketball seniors' thoughts regarding the decisions on the contact and open gym days for our upcoming season. Basketball season is just around the corner, and now would be the time to start putting in the hours for shooting and fundamentals. Contact days and open gyms are especially necessary for the development of all the players to be ready for the start of the season. We understand that basketball is a medium-risk sport. However, as players, we are ready to take the necessary actions to keep these gym times safe for everyone attending. Throughout the summer, many AAU teams have been playing games as well, and they have been able to keep a safe environment for the players. We think that open gyms and contact days offer less of a risk than these tournaments and would be easy to keep safe. We would appreciate if this email would be considered as player input for the Waunakee School Board meeting. We are requesting open gym and contact days. Thank you, Lorraine Stotson, the Waunakee girls basketball seniors. Next to the WCSD Board of Education, Brian Wallace. I am a parent of 2 Waunakee High School students and would like to have this letter read aloud. Good evening. I would like to thank the Waunakee Community School District Board of Education and the administrative team for their time and effort being put forth to successfully get all our WCSD students back to in-person instruction. While we wish the approach that is being taken would be at a more rapid pace, the focus of this letter is not about in-person education. Rather, this letter is about the approach being taken to get our student athletes back on the field or in the pool competing. The challenges we are currently facing are not the WCSD BOE's fault, nor are they the WCSD administrative team's fault. Also, it is certainly not the WCSD student athletes' fault that we are living in a county that has placed such strict restrictions upon its citizens. As administrators in the BOE, you have the ability and control on how to proceed in this environment in order to give our student athletes the best opportunity to compete in the upcoming winter and spring seasons. We are greatly concerned that the approach for the upcoming winter season will be handled in a similar manner as to the fall season. We have a son who is a member of the Waunakee High School boys swim team. He sat back this fall and watched as his sister, who is a junior on the Waunakee High School girls swim team, had her opportunity to achieve her goals taken away due to the cancellation delay of their swim season. We understand and appreciate that there will be a girls swim team season in the early spring, but it will look much different and will not carry the same weight as a normal season. Much of the frustration and disappointment that comes from the fact that high schools within 30 to 60 minutes of Waunakee are having successful athletic seasons, many of which are from the Badger Conference, including here's a link to the recent girls swim meet between Beaver Dam and Baraboo that was live streamed as no fans were allowed to attend. With some planning, these schools have been able to practice and compete at a high level during their standard high school season. These schools are not alone. In essence, the majority of schools not participating in girls high school swimming this fall reside in Dane County. During this swim meet, all swimmers, coaches, and workers were required to wear face masks. In addition, they were able to eliminate timer position behind the blocks and went with the touchpad times. This reduced the number of people needed to run a meet and better accommodate some social distancing of the swimmers. They were able to spread the swimmers out behind the blocks waiting for the event. After each event, a worker sprayed and wiped down the blocks. With no spectators, the swim teams will provide the opportunity to use any bleacher space to spread the teams out and provide better social distancing. This example is provided to show that with some proper planning and a desire to provide opportunity to our student athletes, athletic competitions can be held safely. If Dane County refuses to allow competitions to be held, then allow our student athletes to travel outside the county to compete. The successes of the Waunakee girls golf and tennis programs, as well as the cross-country team, should provide proof that where there is a will, there is a way. With this letter, our primary concern resides around having a Waunakee High School boys swim team season this winter, but it is without reservation. This applies to all our student athletes in all sports seasons. I have watched this fall go on and have observed that nearly 80% of all high school football games and the teams participating have been able to complete their competitions. Some of these teams reside just up Highway 12, not more than 30 minutes away. Have some teams had cases that have resulted in the cancellation of their sporting events? Sure, yet the majority have been able to compete. That is a risk I believe most student athletes and their families would be willing to take. Athletics and sports competitions provide children structure, discipline, organization, and leadership skills. In addition, they build lasting relationships with teammates and competitors. These skills have been a long part of the high school experience. The opportunity to build and develop these skills is taken away from a generation of our next group of leaders. We need to get our student athletes back in the classroom and onto the athletic field or into the pool. This is a time for leadership, and we are looking for the Waunakee Community School Board of Education and the Waunakee High School administrators to be the leaders that we currently need. The Waunakee Community School District has always prided itself on being an educational leader in the state. Let's put action behind those claims. Let them play, signed by Brian Wallace of Hanover Trail. And that's the end of the public comments. And so, with that being done, we're moving on to teaching staff, student, and board reports. First is the student report. And
Anna and Quinn are both here. They're just going to move a table up for them.
Not yet, yes.
Not yet.
not yet.
The students are going to talk and then
Right.
put the tables up.
Oh, all right. So Anna and Quinn are our student reps this month, or this year, I'm sorry. I got the pleasure of meeting with them last week, which was highlight of my week, was meeting with you guys. So I'm so happy that you guys are here and look forward to your report. And I know that we talked about you also sharing some of your experiences as students with the board this evening. So thanks for being here, ladies.
Of course. As you got from the introduction, my name is Anna Engelbert. I hope you are all doing well. Hopefully your Monday night is going pretty well. We're super excited to be here since this is our first meeting of the year where we can present that. I had this position last year. I was fortunate enough to be present at most of the meetings, and although under the unprecedented circumstances, we're both super excited to be here and speak on behalf of the students' voice in the school district.
Yeah, so like Greenberg said, I'm Quinn, and along with Anna, I was elected school board representative from Student Council. So I can start with some activities that Student Council has planned for this upcoming month. So we obviously have a lot of limitations on certain activities that we can do, but there's still a couple that we are able to participate in. One is the blood drive. So we had one in the summer, in July, and because it's a Red Cross organization, it's pretty sanitary, like previous years it was. So this year it hasn't been too hard to make like even more sanitary and safe. So that's still going to be happening on November 4th and 5th. And then we also have a possibility of a more sanitized and safe trick or can, which has been an activity we've done and participated in the past years for Halloween. So what we usually do is the week before Halloween, Student Council members would go around to neighborhoods and hand out flyers, basically explaining to families how they can, on Halloween night, leave out cans and other foods for the food pantry. And this year we're thinking, instead of having door-to-door contact, we do online flyers, possibly through an Infinite Campus message. And then we'd also just have families, if they're comfortable, of course, drop or leave out their food and other such in front of their door. And then obviously masked Student Council members will come and pick up the food. And I know that the food pantry is still doing drop-offs for food, so we can sanitize and then do that accordingly. So those are the two events we have planned for this month.
Yeah, and segueing into a broader perspective, also let me know or us know if you need us to speak louder at all. It's so hard with the masks. But just with the student extracurriculars, there is quite a lot, surprisingly. I'd just like to start with the fall sports that we were gifted with. Fortunately, all of the teams are doing absolutely amazing. The girls golf and girls tennis both made it to state. Today was the girls golf match at the University Ridge, and tomorrow they are continuing. So even though they can't have as many spectators, just cheer them on the best you can. And tennis is taking place October 15th to 17th in Lake Geneva, so that's just some really good news. And I'm speaking on behalf of cross country since I am a member of the team. And we just want to say that we're incredibly grateful for all the hard work that you have put in for just the entire team. And it's definitely, we're very grateful, and the coaches and the whole team are incredibly grateful. And just the seasons have been going great. The seasons are wrapping up. And aside from fall sports, we got lots of clubs that lots of students are partaking in, especially this year, even though we're on a virtual aspect. There are lots of virtual meetings, just like Quinn mentioned. With Student Council, we have our first full group meeting tomorrow, and there are so many more clubs that students are still able to participate in, despite all of the circumstances that we are under. Like NHS, WNC, people are able to volunteer just the same amount still. And that's all I have to say about the extracurricular activities. Any questions so far regarding this?
Alright, I can talk about some of the student inputs that we've gotten from ourselves and other students and peers. So obviously, people really miss in person, and I'm sure like you guys miss being able to do everything normally. And there are things that we don't have control over. And I know a lot of students have said to us personally how they think that the workload right now is a lot, but I feel like a lot of times based on the students we talk to, some freshmen have said that it hasn't been too bad, but then we're juniors, and people have said it's been a lot, but that's also probably due to the courses that they're taking. I do think a lot of students miss having classes where it was an hour and 35 minutes, but obviously since we're not in person, it'd be a little different to sit in front of a screen for that long. So I think under the circumstances, the scheduling is pretty decent for what we can do right now. Students are adjusting, but it hasn't been the worst. One thing a lot of students have said is, so every Monday and, so every A-day for high school, Monday and Thursday we have an advisory time, and it's a time where we talk to other students, and there's, it's the class we had is our past homeroom class. And we talk to other students and get to do like icebreakers and activities like that, and if there's any updates on school and things we have to complete, we do it then. But a lot of students have said, while it's nice to be able to speak to other students, they think that this time is starting to get unnecessary. It was nice in the first couple weeks of school when everyone was getting familiar. But right now, a lot of students say that they would prefer if this was possibly optional. I don't know if you guys have control over that, but that's just some input we've been getting.
You must have talked to my two sons.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of mixed feedback just from the entire student body, all grade levels, mostly focused on the upperclassmen part of it, like Quinn mentioned. The older you get, the more you have to work, and the more work you get in classes, and it's just especially it's obviously going to be stressful, but just like with the upperclassmen, they've been having a tough time adapting to it, but these, I can't really tell what exactly, the students just, the workload, the freshmen think that it's perfectly fine, and the upperclassmen it's a hefty load. But aside from that, we'd also just want to mention, just like anybody would expect, especially you guys, like Quinn mentioned, everybody misses the in-person part, which is definitely important, just because it has some stuff to do with mental health, along with just how often people are going to see each other. So people definitely miss the in-person aspect of schooling, which is just some input that I think you guys have already heard of, but it's definitely something to take into consideration. And we also just like to add about the labs. We talked about this before, but the science labs, more of the hands-on classes like tech ed or any engineering classes, some students definitely think it's much more helpful if they went in person to do the labs just because virtual labs are so difficult. And they're like, lots of classes, like I've heard AP Bio is pretty stressful just with the online labs because they can't get their hands on in an actual classroom. Along with all of the tech ed classes, idea classes with the construction, it's really hard to do that at home. And just any of the other science classes that students are having a hard time getting used to virtually. And that's really all we have to add in conclusion to just the student input on virtual. Are there any other questions regarding this or anything else, or do you need us to repeat anything about anything? All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having us. Yes,
Thank you.
For
so much.
taking your time to come.
Of course.
Great.
Yeah. We appreciate this so much. We appreciate you all, and thank you so much for all your hard work. You're gonna hear that a lot, but it's really, it's amazing. Everything that you guys are doing.
One of the things the ladies shared with me was, I mean, certainly there's pieces that are challenging with the online piece, but you also shared just personally that there were a lot of real positive things that you felt were kind of happening, and how your teachers were being very creative with bringing forth different labs and different simulations for you online. And so I just wanted to articulate, you guys had some great stories that you shared with me, which I really appreciate. So.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that'll take us to board reports and action items. So,
No.
We have
Teacher
teacher update.
Teacher.
they provided,
Actually,
oh, they're here. That's right. There was a letter,
Standing
then
over
you're
here.
also going to be here this time.
I feel like I'm on Wheel of Fortune or something.
I
So,
should
I'm on
go
the X. So we've been in school for a little over a month now, and the teachers continue to work hard to provide our students with the best educational experience we can, and no matter which format they're attending their classes in. Teachers always say, we're lifelong learners, and we've definitely shown that to be true as we continue to search for new ways to reach out to our students to strengthen their educational experiences. Currently, we're in the midst of our fall testing sessions, and speaking of learning, we've learned how to proctor tests over Zoom, which has been an interesting experience, but it's going well, and we're getting it done. We also just finished up parent-teacher conferences this past week, so also via Zoom, so families were able to attend for, depending on the school, between 10 to 15 or 20 minutes with the teachers and get an update with their, how their students are doing in their different classes. Also, I just wanted to touch base on a couple different goals that the district has set. Equity is a district goal this year, and I would like to say that I've definitely noticed, maybe not necessarily a tone shift, but a more openness to discussing equity, both from district leaders as well as building leaders. And I think that is also obvious and apparent in our classrooms as teachers are more open and able to have discussions with their students and searching for resources that show a diverse population. Teachers are also involved in book studies surrounding the ideas of equity. I know that there are several in the district. We've also looked outside the district for different book studies, and there are also committees and discussion groups happening in the buildings as well. And finally, in regards to the social emotional learning of our students, we would like to appreciate the time that we were given to reach out to our students and make sure that we are making connections, connections with our students, even if we can't see them in person. So that's all I have for you today.
Do you think that there was more participation in the conferences doing virtual or face-to-face? Was there, do you know if it went down or went up?
I can't speak for the secondary level. At the elementary level, we always have high participation,
Yeah.
and so I would feel that, I think that it was about the same at the elementary level at least.
And what do you think about contact time?
Well, I do K-6, so
That's true, yeah.
I don't have any personal experience with with high school contact time, unfortunately. You need to send your questions in advance and I'll get, I'll get some answers for you.
Any other questions, comments?
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
Have a
much
good
for your
night.
time.
Thank you, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
All right, now, back to my previous area, board reports. For any board members who attended anything or have something they want to bring up? Yeah, attending things is a little more difficult these days. There was the annual joint review board, which we are part of, where they do an annual review of all the different TID districts in our community. So at this year's meeting, there was talk about extending TID 2, which is the downtown TID. It's been on the books for a long time, with the idea of having money going towards low-income housing. There was some talk about that. Roughly, probably $450,000 could possibly be done if they kept the TID open for 2 more years. That would also cause TID 5 to close 2 years later, because TID 2 funds TID 5 to try to close that one, since that one's underwater. TID 4 could close in 2022. That would bring about $125,000 in property tax to the district to be redistributed. The Kilkenny TID 6 is supposed to close in 2029, which is going to be a delay of 2 more years, since it's not funding at the level they originally anticipated. TID 7 could close also in 2029. That would be 1 year earlier. One major item was TID 9, which is the Tormac project. For those familiar, that's over by Octopi, across the road actually from Octopi. Well, Tormac never really did it, so that project has never really started. And what happened was Tormac sold the property to Octopi. Octopi is now looking at putting a warehouse and possibly more production facility over there. But in doing that, they're seeing a TID district, and so they want to be considered to get the TID money that Tormac was originally going to get. So they want to expand that, and one interesting point is the village has listed in their documents that every year they've been spending $1,650 running that TID district and keeping up the paperwork and their fees. So if they never actually have a TID, the village would basically be out that amount of money. So there's probably some incentive by the village to actually create and use that TID in order for them to recoup those funds. That said, that would then mean we would have more property value off the books, which would cause us to have a larger impact on property owners within the school district.
Is that currently off the books already because of Tormac or not?
It's sitting there as an open district that they could allocate funds out, but it would still have to go through the process. But because it's been sitting there open, the village has been putting expenses against it. But they can never collect it if they don't actually start paying out a TID. So there's a bit of incentive there for the village to do it, but Octopi, they're going to expand. They have customers and they have a need to expand. But then that kind of throws out the whole but-for test. Octopi is going to do it. They've already bought the land. They know they have to expand. They've already signed contracts with customers. So why do you give them a TID when it's not really creating anything, but it's probably going to come forward at some way or level? Yes?
So you indicated that there might be some extensions of some of these TIDs. Did you actually vote on it? And they actually
We don't get to
extended
vote
them?
on it. Once the TID's created,
So it's going to be extended.
yeah, quite probably.
So that's my problem with these TIDs, is they never die. They
TID
never
2
go-
is still here, isn't it?
They never go away. They find other ways to get funding, which obviously hurts us.
It is funny, I've been doing this for 3 years now, and every year it's like, oh, this one's going to close a year or two earlier, this one's going to close a year or two later, and then the next year comes up, oh, it's going to close, and the numbers, the years just keep rolling around. I do agree with you, it is problematic. I wish changes to a TID, whether changing the date or whatever, was actually subject to the whole joint review board. Problem is, it's not. It's subject to the municipality. So that can be problematic about how and when you create a TID. So that's basically what they came up with this year. So we might be looking at one on TID 9 shortly, but at least that one we get a vote yes or no on. As you all know, we do have a policy on TIDs that requires a strict adherence to the but-for test. And as of right now, I expressed that at the meeting, that I don't see how the but-for test is being met on this one. And they said, well, we're looking at that, we'll have an analysis written, and we'll see what the analysis says.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's move on.
All right, next is item 10, COVID-related updates and recommendations and decision points. And Randy.
The first item we have is just a review of our dashboard and the reconsideration or consideration of reopening decisions. This item is on here as per the last board meeting. We had a vote by the board to approve moving 3rd and 4th grade into a hybrid in-person model starting on October 26th. We met just prior to this meeting this evening with our medical advisory committee. So the purpose of this agenda item is really, we're going to use it for twofold. One, to share the data that we shared with the medical advisory committee. I know some of our board members were present for that. And then the second piece is just to provide an update on kind of how some of our at least high-level numbers have shaken out with regards to 3rd and 4th grade as our elementary administration has moved forward with connecting with parents and gathering information there. So I'm actually going to start there, then move into the dashboard. So if I go up here, Rebecca, is that where I can find that?
Far left folder.
Oh, sorry. There we go. And
The one with the 2 grids in the middle there, next, right to the left of the
here,
hybrid model.
thank you. So in your packet, you will find this. The board members will see it in your. This is just really a summary of some of the work that took place since survey data came back from our parents, or a sign up for changing to virtual or remote. We put that out there for our K through 4th grade students. As you can see, just down here in the yellow part, you had around 100 students who changed direction, either going from remote or from in-person to remote, or from a hybrid, from remote to a hybrid. So those pieces have then precipitated some changes that our principals have been and are starting to work their way through. I think from a positive aspect of it, we don't believe at this point we will need to hire any additional staff. So we've been able to do this with the existing staff that we have. I believe there's a potential for one staff member who may need to change to another grade level, but that's a piece that we're still working out here, and we'll do that this week. But I just wanted to share with you generally kind of how some things and shifts have taken place. A question that was that the board was interested in is what level of kind of remote versus hybrid choices. So we're continuing to run about 1/3 choosing remote classes and 2/3 looking at the in-person hybrid data. So I know Amy, Dean, and Dan are here, and this is something that you guys worked on for much of the day today. Anything to add with regards to that data, or did I kind of hit the highlights? All right, awesome. Any questions from board members with regards to that?
No, this is just 3-4, right?
This is actually K through 4. Because what we did was we said that the K through 2 folks could switch at the quarter, and we pushed it, since the quarter is coming up so quickly, we did that at this time. So that shift will take place around the 26th around the quarter. Is that right, Amy? Yep. Thank you. So this actually summarizes from our K through 4, Jack, and you can see it broken out in a couple different ways. The upper right-hand corner graph just shows the percentage that are in-person versus remote. Stayed relatively consistent with some of their initial choices as we went into the school year.
How did the busing piece fit in?
That's the next step. Once we get into assigning that, that's why we needed to get all of these pieces. I mean, as Amy shared with me, as we have 100 kids that are moving from one way to another, it's not only busing, it's changing seesaw counts, it's making sure that we have anyone who's coming from a virtual coming in person, or vice versa. There's going to be some shifts as far as some assignments that potentially can be taking place, and we have to make sure all of those places are synced up as well. So that's the next iteration of this, but once we have the assignments of who these kids are and kind of looking at the AM, PM aspects of it, we turn it over to Lamers for them to work through that. And then there's also an alternative transportation piece that we have embedded for some of the families as well. So that's kind of the piece that we're hoping to secure this week, so that as we go into next week, all of this can be communicated out and we can be ready for the 26th, if that's the decision that the board makes tonight.
So Randy, I just want to make this clear. There's only one student who is actually in person in any of the elementary schools who's switching from in-person to virtual.
I'm going to let Amy look at that. Now, that would be, so switch from
In-person to virtual, who already was in person in the building.
So K2, yeah, there's one person.
That's the one at Prairie in his first grade.
Yeah.
So you'll note at the top it says, does not include previous requests. So because the board has said that people can switch from in-person to remote at any time, we fill those as they occur. So this was just on this survey that we sent out last week.
Okay. Because there were some previously, right?
Yep.
Okay, that's why.
I think at the last meeting, Amy, you shared that since like our launch on September 8th until our last meeting, we had like 7 or 8 total.
Yep.
And then this was just another one
Yep.
that was added as part of that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. All right, so then the next piece that we wanted to review with you is what we shared with Medical Advisory Committee. The first piece was just, and I'm going to ask Kurt to help me out with these again, just so that we can walk through them. This is just our data as far as what we are tracking from internal incidents with COVID cases and also close contacts. So Kurt, I'll let you kind of walk this through this sheet again with the board.
Sure. I know most of you are either at the medical advisory or sitting at the back table. Mike, you may have been the only one who wasn't. So I'll just highlight a couple of the columns that may look a little bit different than what they have in the past. Column number 4 is just an indication of the number of staff who have now cleared from a positive test or a close contact. Column 7 is the same for students. Again, just an indication of individuals who've cleared. So then if you kind of do the math, you can see the active people in isolation or quarantine. And then the column next to that, student cleared, is I'm trying to reflect in that column the current students who are not attending because they have COVID-like symptoms. Because that's been a question that we've been asked. This column previously was an aggregate number of students who were displaying symptoms, but I thought that wasn't very helpful and not very meaningful, so this is the current number of students that we as a district are not having attend because they have COVID-like symptoms. And again, we're using the public health guidance because there's certain symptoms that if you have one of them, you're not supposed to be coming to school, and then there are other symptoms where you have to have 2 or more of those. So that's what those columns are reflecting. I did share at the Medical Advisory Committee that since Annie and I put this together at 2:30, 3 o'clock, we did have 3 more students who tested positive and 3 more students who are close contacts, and those are all at the high school level. So the new high school numbers would be 6 positive students and 28 students who are close contacts.
Kurt, on those 3 students, have you already done the contact tracing then?
Yeah.
So were they related in how they became positive, or were they unrelated?
Some were, some were not. It's a mixture.
Or I'm thinking the 3 positive ones. Was it in other words, was it a one event thing, or were they all?
Well, I don't want to
independent?
misspeak, so let me just look here. There was a relationship between some of the students that were in either column, some positive and some close contacts, or some of them, but not all of them. It wasn't one incident that caused all of them.
It just seems weird, that's the highest number we've had in one day, and they were all in the high school.
Yep.
Any questions about this sheet? We'll move on to kind of the next level, which talks about kind of our Waunakee data. And this is a piece that we really extrapolated off of the larger spreadsheet that you have in front of you. This is just kind of a summary of that data. And I think what we've tried to do is hit some of the highlights of data points that were important to our medical advisory committee, particularly positive tests, 7-day and 14-day averages, and then the burden rate. A couple things just to highlight. I mean, I think Dave mentioned it at the previous meeting that walking into tonight, we would most likely see a little bit higher burden rate, just because we were dropping off some of these lower numbers, which you did see occur. The other piece that I would share is when you look at kind of the dates that are going to be coming off in the next few days, that'll be a 10, a 5, and a 16. And the current, when you look at the 7-day averages, at least at this level, and realizing we're dealing with relatively small n numbers, it's staying relatively consistent and flat for the last week. 14-day average obviously has some pieces in it, like the higher numbers and a few lower numbers that kind of cause a little bit more variability. And then the burden rate is a piece that's really built off of that Harvard model. So Kurt, I know you've worked on kind of the pulling this data together and figuring it out. Anything else that you would highlight for the board with regards to our community snapshot tonight?
No, again, it's hard to know what's going to happen on any given day, but I'll just share this for everybody's benefit. The Alliant Energy Center has different hours now, so on Sundays and Mondays they're closed. So that is going to kind of shift, the numbers of tests that are given to a different level for the next couple of days, just because of that change in their schedule. But as a whole, Randy is right. The next 3 days, particularly 2 of the next 3, we have larger numbers that will not be factored into the 14-day average anymore. So, if we kind of hold where we've been, you could anticipate that maybe a slight flattening will happen. But again, you also don't know from any day what's going to happen.
And actually, something that just hit me looking at this at the previous meeting. We have a significant number more testing than we did the weeks previous. I mean, it looks like, when you look at the number of negative tests compared to negative tests, they're double digits above what was done prior. And so the test volume is increasing, and that should help with, the more that are testing, the more valid your data is going to be. So for whatever reason, more people are testing, and we're still kind of, that 7-day average is still pretty well flat, and I was pleased to see that.
I think we will, in general, see a higher number of tests that are administered, because as we approach the cold and flu season, more people are going to present symptoms, and the medical professionals are going to want to try to do a sort as to what's going on.
So when someone has a respiratory symptom, but they go get tested to make sure it's not COVID. Are those numbers then reflected in this as well as a negative test?
Anytime a person is given a COVID-specific test, that number is reported in these numbers, yes.
Any other questions with regards to this data sheet? And then the last one is this is just extrapolated off of the data dashboard from Public Health Madison-Dane County. They're always about a week behind in kind of the compilation, so this was published last week on Thursday, and you can just see some of the numbers and some of the reflections that were taking place at that time. But I think the one that we've been trying to focus on the most has really been looking at the aspect of what's happening locally, an update on some of the other internal processes. We are approving tonight, are going to be asking for your approval tonight for an additional contact tracer. Brian and Kurt have also been involved with hiring and filling a nurse position, which we are hoping we're going to be able to do this week. And then we have, obviously, as we've had more experience with the contact tracing pieces, we've become more astute at that process, what it takes, etc. As you consider this issue tonight, I guess the piece that just to be aware of, our limitations and strengths from a contact tracing piece just really fall within kind of what level comes at any one time. So there has to be a realization that if we had an incident that involved 10 people in one day, we probably, with a lot of hard work by a lot of people, can probably handle that within the time frame that we want to. If we have multiples of those come at any one time, there may be a point where we have to hit a pause for a day on a program, a classroom, or some aspect of our work in order for us to catch up with that. There's not really a threshold right now that I have that I can just say, well, this is what it is, and then that's what will precipitate it. It'll be a piece that we'll learn through experience, and we'll know as we get into it. But I think that's just a piece that we have to be aware of, that could happen. And some of those are not going to be 2-week shutdowns. It may just be an opportunity where we have to get caught up with contact tracing. I think the piece that I would absolutely articulate to Kurt, Brian, and our nursing staff and all of those who are contact tracing, I think they are doing it at an extremely high level with a great level of care and wanting to make sure that we do it as expeditiously and as professionally as possible. And I appreciate that aspect of it because I feel we're doing a great job in that area. And that's our goal, is to continue to do that moving forward. Mark?
I don't think we've given enough credit to Kurt, you and your staff, for what you've been doing. My question was from what I heard earlier from Amy when he talked about the transitioning from one format to the other. So if we would have a pause, you mentioned that you might have to change CISA accounts for those who are going from one modality to another. What would be the challenge going from face-to-face to a temporary total virtual? Will there be any? Because I know they have a Wednesday totally asynchronous.
So your question, for example, would be if we had to pause a classroom for a day and they had to go virtual, what's the transition to that look like?
So if we would just pause the class, that teacher would still have all of his or her own students already set up on all of their remote devices. So it would just be a matter of the teacher, shifting the instruction to remote, if it's all one class. At the last meeting, Joan had asked about, if a child is quarantining, a single child, like a close contact or something, and we talked about the different scenarios. So sometimes we'll have a child join another classroom Zoom. Sometimes we'll have them watch the recording or things like that. So it's disruptive because it's a different person or it's a different, setting. Or if we would have to pause a whole class, of course, the instructional delivery would change, but we wouldn't have to do that behind the scenes for quarantine in that case.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions on the COVID numbers?
Actually, I have one, and Kurt might be able to answer this. Regarding the census tracts, and Rebecca, if you could go back a couple of them to the slide where we have all of the different census tracts we're looking at.
Oh, it's the big spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's, the one that is 111.02, that's Middleton and Westport.
Which one?
The one at the top.
Oh, yeah, yep.
That top one is Middleton Westport. Is there any way that we can get better data than that one? Because that census tract is almost entirely Middleton School District.
It's actually not. There is some of Middleton, but this incorporates this track, for those of you who know our district well. It begins at the state park, runs across Onken Road, comes down Q to Balzer, goes to Balzer up to Pheasant Branch, goes up Pheasant Branch to the north to K, runs over to Highway 12, comes down Highway 12 to Century Avenue, and then follows Century Avenue M out back to the park. So it covers all of Bishop's Bay, covers the houses along the lake that are ours, everything that's on Onken Road, Balzer. So it does incorporate a fair amount of the north side of the city of Middleton, west of Q, and then all the way out to 12. So there is a fair amount. Part of the school district that we are not capturing, and the reason I didn't capture it, is the area actually where Mark lives, because that would be a track that would actually cover the village of Dane. It's the Lodi School District and part of Windsor and DeForest. So I didn't grab that. So when I looked at the housing that's in where Mark is, it offsets a fair amount because it also doesn't connect is it Nature Valley
Nature
or
Valley.
whatever? That's kind
Does it
of
do the old one?
off of Easy and
Yeah, right.
Cuba Valley.
Does it do the furthest one near River Road? Or is that not included too?
No, it doesn't go out River Road either.
Because
Because
that's a
it goes up
substantial number of
I.
homes.
It goes up I.
That's almost 200 homes.
So I thought I was balancing quite a bit with Middleton. I know it's not perfect, and I actually asked Public Health if there was a better way to really grab true Waunakee. And their response to me is, as you would anticipate, that these tracks were set up many, many, many years ago and have been used to, when probably the villages and the cities weren't as big as they are now, of course. These were all probably farm fields when some of these things were created. And they said that they won't be doing any revisions to them because communicable diseases don't follow boundaries and things like that. So it doesn't answer your question, but it just kind of provides some background as to why I grabbed what I grabbed, because I didn't want to miss Bishop's Bay and the houses along the lake, because there's a fair number of houses in Orchards Beach and in that area as well. And then there are some houses that I'm not capturing, because then that would really, I thought, have skewed our information with outside of the district sources. So
There were some trade-offs we had to put in, and that was kind of, I guess, what Kurt and I looked at it was that whole piece with grabbing a little bit more of Middleton, but also losing part of the pieces to the north. And trying to see, well, at least it was, we felt it at least gave a snapshot of what was happening, at least generally regionally.
Mike, it's absolutely fair and absolutely a good point to make clear is that this isn't perfect. It absolutely is true, this is not perfect.
So is this the point where we make the decision on bringing back 3-4?
This would be, right now, the motion is standing that we continue on and we would open on Monday the 26th. Unless someone would wish to make a different motion based on what they've seen. Otherwise, we would just continue.
Based on our meeting.
The last
week.
motion. was to open
You don't
on the
need a
26th.
motion to continue with 3-4 is the motion right now. So if there was kind of a point to reconsider that, then this would be the opportunity where another motion could be entertained.
Yes, Mark.
Just having sat in on the previous meeting, I thought there was a slight change in the perspective from the medical staff, particularly Dr. Anderson. One of the last things he said, it's really not a clinical decision, it's an operational decision. More of if we feel we've got the pieces in place to handle the next group of kids coming in, and I haven't heard from our leadership that we're not prepared. And so, from everything, it looks like what Kurt's done, what Randy's done, what your principals have been doing, what our staff was doing. It appears to me the operational piece is there. We've got high comments again from the medical group about the protocols that our staff is doing, and how with their efforts we've had a very controlled situation with our local numbers within the district, within the schools itself. And so I think as we look at this, it's really that is his decision. It's not so much the clinical numbers, the COVID data. It's do we feel we can handle these kids coming in? And it sounds to me like we can.
So not seeing a motion, then we continue on that third and fourth will open on the 26th. Barring drastic changes that unfortunately do happen sometimes. So next is an update on the plans for grades 7 through 12.
So tonight we have, Tim Schell is with us tonight, but also pleased that Brian Borowski and Jeff Keenis are here. Tonight what we wanted to bring in front of the board was an opportunity for you to hear from our secondary administration with regards to what is taking place with regards to the programs that are occurring within the 7-12 level, and also an update on some of the planning pieces that are occurring there as well. I kind of broke this into 3 parts for them to speak to. One is a review of what's happened thus far this fall, what's their assessment of what's going on, and kind of how is that set up. Second is to look at what's going on with enhanced remote, that being a piece that they can speak to with regards to their plans for bringing back some specific programs to work in a more hands-on manner, some of which I believe started today. And then the third part is really to give you a snapshot of when we get to that point when there is a movement to move back with 7-12, what would the plan look like? What's the hybrid aspect? And that's the pieces you saw in board book tonight. So a little bit of this is going to be some anecdotal discussion that I know that Jeff and Brian will talk about. And then the last part will be kind of a more formalized piece of sharing some of the work that they're doing within their buildings to plan for what a hybrid model would look like at the point in time when we get there. So thanks for being here, guys, and I'll kind of launch it off with, to start with, just a kind of a review from both of you, like what's happening with regards to how the fall has gone and what you've seen with regards to the instruction and the remote delivery.
So just want to remote right now?
Sure. Why don't we just start with how the fall has gone, Jeff? That'd be great.
So first of all, the fall, from what we can gather, has been going far better than the spring did. And I say that purely from hearing what people have said because I was not here last spring. But our teachers have been working incredibly hard to try to provide an experience that is in some way comparable to what they could do if students were in the building. They've been working hard with instructional practices that would allow kids to interact via our Zoom program through the computer. There is also a lot of materials posted online through Schoology as well for kids to access when they are not in their synchronous learning models. We do have time for students to be meeting with teachers during asynchronous times, either in the afternoons at the middle school and also during the day on Wednesdays as well. There also are a handful of teachers who are shifting around their time with their teams in the morning so that they can meet with students in the mornings if that meets the students' needs as well. So we've had a great deal of flexibility in the middle school model with teachers' abilities to kind of fill the gaps for kids who are struggling, while at the same time maintaining what many would feel to be a reasonable amount of screen time for students to interact with their teachers and also interact with other classmates as well. Of course, everybody would agree that having kids in the building back to the way they were before we had COVID would be the most ideal situation, but for right now, given where we are, people feel like we are in a good spot with our remote instruction and are continuing to improve that on a daily basis.
How about you, Brian?
Started the year with the synchronous model, going 4 days a week. We also added in an advisory for students twice a week, and that was specifically based on feedback that we got, research that's going on, that kids feel like they're isolated and need social emotional support, and some concerns from staff about students with executive functioning skills where they needed just ideas on how to submit a professional email or to make sure that they were organized in their days. So that's, and we tried to put in the advisory to support those kids. Obviously, I heard the students talk. It's mixed, but there's good and bad with it. Some kids love it. Some kids are frustrated by it. I would say that's the same for staff. So it is something new, but we put it in to make sure that kids are feeling supported so they could start the year positive. And anecdotally, I think it's helped a lot because we've had a lot less issues as far as students who we are notified that are really struggling. That is less this year than it was last year when we didn't have this sort of structure in. So our teachers have done an amazing job since last March. And what we're doing is not easy. I know that this has been a struggle across the nation, but our teachers have responded in incredible ways. Every day is something new. They have to learn something new, a new skill. We've put in a lot of different programming for them and supports, and even just parent-teacher conferences, a completely different model than what we've ever used before, using Sign Up Genius. All those things are new for people, and it takes time, and we've trained them. And overall, I feel that the semester has started off strong. Our students are being supported, and we have structure in the day, and our courses are doing the best job that they can to make sure that kids are getting what they need to be successful. We're doing the best job that we can to make sure that we're supporting teachers in this ever-changing environment, and I could not be prouder of our kids and our teachers and our mid-team for all the work that they've done to make what we have right now, I feel, very successful. So parents kind of mix on things that I get from them. It just depends on what's going on. Like, some people want us to have school on Wednesdays, and other people get upset that we're having school on Wednesdays because they've structured their families around not having school. So when we change the schedule, we have a 4-day week where Friday's off, we have school on Wednesdays, and I hear it from both sides. And we should have school every Wednesday. We should never have school on Wednesday because it conflicts. So there's, it's just kind of depends on the day, what's going on, and how that's going. But we've built in a lot of time for interventions. We have 10 contact times throughout the week compared to 4 before. We had 1 homeroom and 4 contact times. So the students and staff have an ability to connect with each other pretty much every day to get support. Even on Wednesdays, we have staff reaching out and connecting with kids and supporting them to make sure that they're not struggling, and if they are struggling, they have an opportunity to work one-on-one. So, I've received a fair amount of feedback from what we have been doing. For the most part, it's been positive. Parents were really appreciative of the parent-teacher conferences. They've also been very appreciative of the schedule that we put together and the work that our staff has done to do the best job that they possibly can do in a virtual environment. So.
Any questions from the board just about kind of what's gone on thus far this fall?
For both Jeff and Brian, could you, I don't know if it's too soon following the conferences, but do you have a sense of what the participation level was? Was it something that you know exactly and you're thrilled with it, or does it compare to previous years?
I'll do high school. It was better. We had more participation. I think parents appreciated being able to schedule things for themselves, to be guaranteed a spot for the most part. They pretty much filled up at the high school, and that's fairly rare. I mean, conferences are hit or miss. There's certain teachers that are, stacked up. You taught math, Joan, so you know. They're waiting in line for an hour and a half to see one teacher, and now they didn't have to wait, and so they could pretty much schedule all their conferences in an hour and be done. So I think that they appreciated it, and staff appreciated the opportunity to know who was coming and when, and so they could prepare and have information for the meetings. So I think it's a model that we will probably stick with moving forward, at least the scheduling and maybe even the virtual part, because I think on a rainy night, parents might appreciate being able to Zoom in to see a teacher and have that schedule. So that was a big win for us.
Yeah, and I would agree with Brian. Our teachers felt like the conferences went very well. Participation was incredibly high on the Monday night. People were pretty booked. Then Friday, a little bit less, although from what I've been told, that's kind of historically been the case on Fridays from that 8 to 12 slot. Same as Brian said, parents really, I think, appreciated knowing when they could show up. I also had some teachers share that they felt like the 10 minutes was appropriate to have a good conversation, but it didn't allow for maybe conversations to maybe go on too long that they could circle back on later at a different time, so that maybe I think in the past when you had parents having to wait in line because one conversation was going quite long, people knew they were going to get in and out in 10 minutes. They could plan their night accordingly, and I think that was one really big win. Also, to echo Brian's sentiment, I think the virtual format of this opened some doors to us for maybe how we could do parent-teacher conferences differently. I think it also allows us to maybe reach families that we haven't reached so well in the past as well, because transportation and things like that can be an issue, and when you can just click a button and use your technology or your phone to get on, it does open some doors for us. So it's going to be one of those things that I think we circle back on as we get on the backside of this at some point and continue to use going forward, not just for parent-teacher conferences, but I think in general, just opening up lines of communication with families throughout the year, because the ease of being able to do so with a Zoom meeting or a Google Meet, I think will stick with us for quite some time.
Parents didn't have to take a shift off or a day off. They could even do it during a break and schedule it around their work schedule. So the flexibility it provided, I think, turned out to be an amazing thing for our students and our staff and parents. And more students than ever help parents get into the Zoom meetings and attend. So I think that was a positive too.
Any other questions about the fall delivery and some of the pieces that have gone along with up to the work that 7 through 12 have done thus far this year? All right. The next piece, if you guys can just talk a little bit about some of the work you're doing with regards to the enhanced remote, and give a little bit of an idea of some of the timelines for that and some of the programs that you've identified and are working with staff on trying to move forward in that way.
We actually have our first one is this Wednesday, so that's pretty exciting. We have some AP Bio kids coming in. We have another one on October 26th. We have our CTE, so that's some of our hands-on construction classes, woods, and an ag class is going to bring kids in on that Monday, starting for that whole week. We also have a science teacher that's been trying to plan on bringing some kids in. COVID kind of got in the way of that for a minute, but I think we're back on track, so we'll get them in. Culinary Arts wants to bring some kids in who are struggling to do the work from home. And so that's all going to be starting this week. We're planning on that on Wednesday. It's a day where there's an opportunity to get kids in safely, and we have the staffing to do it. and to see how that goes. And so we're stepping into this at the high school, and there's obviously staff that have concerns about this. There's students that have concerns, so it's and parents. So it's totally voluntary at this point if students want to come in and parents want to send their kids. And so there's some that are going to participate. What we've told staff is it can't be anything kids are going to be punished for if they cannot show up to or unable to, or because of health conditions cannot come to school. So it's an opportunity for them to have this experience, but we also have to provide the opportunity for our kids who are 100% virtual. So it's not a punishment for them if they can't show up. So our staff understand that, our students understand that. It's we've talked about this with the middle school too. It's an enrichment opportunity that they get to come in, but it can't be anything where grades or points are applied to it where a kid that cannot do it. And we also are going to try to provide the opportunity for kids who are virtual only so they can have that experience too. So something that we're working on. We are stepping into it. It is happening. It's taken some time to build and to make sure we have a committee that, which is Kurt and Brian and Tim, and so they would hear what the plan is. We make sure that things are in place as far as the cleaning supplies, how kids are coming into the building. They have their health forms. If they don't have their health forms, we have our healthcare staff can take the temperatures, but we're trying to build schedules that we can make this happen starting on Wednesdays, but then after that it'll continue to build. So again, it's nice to have a committee to look at these like they did in the summer for athletics and summer school, to make sure that whatever we're doing it safe and we're doing it thoughtfully, and that we are going to give kids opportunities that they aren't currently getting just virtually.
Brian, do those classes happen during their regular time period?
No, so like Wednesday, they would, the plan for this Wednesday, it would be, they're scheduling them in hour blocks. So 10 kids come in for an hour. There's a little break in between the next group. The CTE kids, those would be in the afternoon blocks of our intervention time. So after classes are over.
Brian, could you give us just kind of a guesstimate of how many kids this is going to entail, at least initially?
For Wednesday?
I mean, because then it's going to continue with other groups. It's how I understood it, so.
We're talking in the hundreds.
Okay.
70 or so for Wednesday. I don't have the exact number.
Sure,
I mean, they're still in the process of making sure that they signed up, but around 70 for this Wednesday. I think the CTE classes, the vast majority of those kids are planning on coming. So for those afternoon blocks, and they're separating them out in groups, and kids will be meeting down by the towards the auto shop and the wood shop, and then they'll be escorted into those areas so that they have an opportunity. Yeah, but we're talking hundreds of kids.
Thank you.
Also, they're providing transportation as well for students who live outside of the village who need transportation. So they're gathering that information, and we'll work with Lamers to run buses so that the kids can receive the transportation that they need.
So one of the things that we've been talking about is, and we talked, and you were here, bringing 3 and 4 back. Next is the probably 5, 6, 7, and so forth. What kind of planning are you doing right now so that we can start bringing these kids back in numbers?
If I could just get to that in a minute, Jack.
I'd like to get to that because, you know, I'm happy to hear, you know, your discussion and everything's going great, but I think what people are starting to wonder is, what is that plan?
And I understand that, Jack, but I think the pieces that we've done, we've not given these guys any time at all to speak about their program, and I think that's important. And that's about all the work our teachers have done.
Thank you.
I understand, Jack, but
Thank you. But continue.
These guys have a lot of things that they've done. They're doing a lot of things that the board asked to do, and I think that they should be given the time to do that. The
Thank you.
second part of
Continue.
this is exactly what you're asking for, which is the presentation on the hybrid piece. So I don't mean to be short, Jack, but I do want to give them the time to really talk about some of the things that they're trying to put in place. And the whole next part of our conversation is with regards to that hybrid planning. So,
Jeff, could you speak just a little bit to what's going on for enhanced with middle school?
Yes, and I'll try to be quick and brief. But yeah, cover things. We really have about 3 areas we're moving forward with it right now. The first one is our Horizons program, which serves some of our kids who struggle to engage in school, and we have a plan in place for one of them to be coming in, I believe, this week, and then also just actually today we're informed that we have another 3 to 4 families who have finally got back to us about interest in trying to navigate getting them into the building as well. So that will reflect very similar to what our program in special ed looks like right now. So we'll have kids coming in at different times of the day. It won't be just like on Wednesdays. It could be whatever seems to work in the parent schedule and our teacher schedule to meet with those kids. We're also looking at potentially using part of our LMC as a place for kids to come in who maybe have been struggling to get internet access at home. So we're trying to find a way that we can utilize that part of our building as well to kind of get kids engaged. But with the model that's close to the high school's model, right now we're making the most progress is in our tech ed area. And we don't have quite the breadth of hands-on classes at the middle school that they have at the high school. We also don't have kids who can drive. So we're having to navigate transportation as well. But as of today, we have 93 kids in our 7th grade tech ed class who have expressed an interest to come into the school and take part in a live class there out of about 117 responses that we had. And so we're starting there first. Again, like Brian said, capping things at 10 kids for safety issues with our shop areas. We are trying to figure out a way to get kids in the building in larger chunks of time so that they can get hands-on and stay in it. So we're looking at doing 2-hour chunks of time in our tech ed, but then maybe potentially using not only Wednesdays, but also some of our asynchronous time the rest of the week for those families that can help assist us with getting their kids to and from school. So we're gathering transportation information right now to try to make that work. So that's where we're at there, and then as we get that rolling, we'll try to see if we can generate some more interest from other areas in our building to see how we might be able to further roll that out if we don't get to the point where we're in a hybrid model before that.
Any questions about any of the pieces with enhanced remote that Brian and Jeff and their staff are rolling forward here starting today and then in the next few weeks?
I just want to say I'm thrilled to hear this. I think it's a significant number of kids that are going to be getting some opportunities, and I'm hoping the community welcomes the news because it looks like some real terrific opportunities for our kids at both middle school and high school. So thank you guys and your staff for making this happen.
All right. If there's no other questions, then I'll move on to exactly what Jack was talking about, which is kind of the planning that's taking place and has taken place with regards to 7-12 instructional piece. And this is a few slide PowerPoint that it's not in your packet, but we can certainly share it with you afterwards. And what you found in your packet were some of the scheduling pieces that they've been working on at the 7-12 level with regards to the hybrid model and the different decision points that we've had to make with regards to putting that piece together. So Tim, Brian, and Jeff, I'll turn this back to you guys and just tell me when to click and I'll walk us through it.
Thank you, Randy. And so this, and Rebecca, I don't know if we'll put this in a slideshow mode or we're going to just walk through it this way. We can do whichever.
You driving there, Randy?
Is it, do you have it up in here?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. It's.
But this is really reflective of the content that was in your packet, but a slide deck just to try to walk through some of the context and the reasoning a little bit more clearly. And I think the first thing to understand is that everybody involved with this understands how challenging this is for our families, our students, our educators, and this is really an unprecedented time. There's nothing we can offer in terms of an option for you as a board that will make everyone happy. And likewise, almost anything that we go forward with is going to involve some compromises, and probably everybody is going to be at least somewhat unhappy in some regard with the compromises. But, you know, this is not a situation any of us sought out. Everybody's doing the best that they can, and better days will be ahead for all of us. If we could go to the next slide. Just want to go back 90 days when we were looking at this in July and where we looked at our planning then. And this probably seems like a year ago, and if we could put 2 clicks on here. We have found ourselves in the delayed reunion scenario where, you know, we're hoping to get everybody back to campus at some point during the year, but it's not now. And the model we're looking at is, in what we're going to put on the table here, is predominantly a 2-day rotation. If we can go to the next slide. Now, for our instructional delivery model, if we could add 3 clicks to this, again, we have to shift to conditions, hybrid model when all in person is not possible, and always offering a remote option for families to opt into for various reasons. Let's go ahead to the next slide. So again, you know, to a person, our preference, if it's available, is an in-person model where it can be safely managed and it's allowable under the guidance. And when we were talking about this 90 days ago, some of the important decisions that Dane County Public Health has made in this process were still over the horizon. This slide from 90 days ago, we were still talking about capacities per classroom. And of course, several weeks later, we found it was a 6-foot requirement. If we could add, maybe 2 more clicks here. And so, all of these constraints that really were going to lead us to a hybrid model for 7-12, if we were capped at 15, the same realities apply with the 6-foot requirements that are part of the standing county public health order. We can go to the next slide. And this is our last slide from July. Again, the concept was for secondary, given de-densification restrictions, in this case it's turned out to be the 6-foot requirement, there's just no way for us to bring students in with all the kids in the building at a time, even if we have a certain percentage of families opt their child into virtual. So that's where our summer planning was. And now let's look at where we are at. And so the next slide, when we were meeting in the summer, Brian at the high school, Jeff at the middle school, they had teacher work groups, also had support staff representatives. We also had some parent representatives, and at least at the high school, we also had some student representatives. So in the summer, we were covering all of our bases. We had work groups working on remote, hybrid, and in-person learning options for both schools. Once you as a board made that decision in early August that we were going to open grades 5th through 12th remotely and hopefully transition to something different at the second quarter, we adjusted our priorities. And so a smooth reopening in the remote model became the lead horse in the race. And really that was the focus of all of our planning efforts in the latter half of August into early September. We temporarily suspended our hybrid planning until the second half of September to make sure we had a good launch in the remote learning. And we have indefinitely suspended planning on full-time in-person learning for all students until it's feasible under the local orders and you give us a direction to look at it. Now, the challenges that we would have to navigate in bringing back students on a partial basis in a hybrid model, we'll actually learn a lot of lessons from there that we can then apply to the day when we bring everybody back. So here's the current hybrid plan. As you noted in your packet, it's an abbreviated day, which would be 3.5 hours on campus, followed by remote contact time, similar in many respects to the schedule middle school and high school students currently are experiencing. At the high school, In our current draft, that means 4 45-minute periods a day plus passing times, and the advisory goes from twice a week to being once a week on the Wednesday. The middle school in the current draft looks a little bit different. It's 4 35-minute periods daily plus passing times, and the advisory period is occurring on each day. And again, these are the current drafts. And so in our model, as it stands now, one group of students who are in the hybrid would attend Monday and Tuesday in person, and they would video conference in on the Thursday and Friday. There would be another group, similarly sized in terms of population, that would be on campus Thursday and Friday, and they would be Zooming in on the Monday and Tuesday. And the all-remote group is coming in on video conference on all 4 days. This 3.5-hour day is compatible with our transportation requirements to support the programs for the other schools. We met with Steve Summers and Jeremy from Lamers, and we know this will work from Lamers' perspective. If we could move ahead. And you saw this in your packet. This is the high school hybrid model schedule, and you can see the 45 minutes, and you can see the virtual contact time in the afternoon. And the next slide takes us to the middle school hybrid, slightly different grade configurations when kids are on campus in terms of durations because of the advisory. And then we have the virtual contact time at the end of the day, similar to the high school. So you should have seen this in your packet. And in the packet, in the notes, it explains some of the reasoning, but we wanted to kind of pull it together in a more clear manner here in this slide deck. So why an abbreviated day? We want everybody to understand we did consider a fuller 6.5-hour day on campus because obviously when you look at it, that synchronous learning time is very attractive. But at this time, we believe the abbreviated day is a preferable way to enter into the hybrid model for the reasons listed here on the slide. Number one is lunch. We can't go to a full day without problem-solving lunch. And I think all of us know that among all of the things that we may choose to do in terms of daily life during the pandemic, eating in a communal setting is one of the higher risk activities. And in fact, we had a CDC study that came out last month that noted that there is basically a double risk of contracting COVID if you dined out at a restaurant for the participants in the study. And that didn't differentiate between eating indoors and eating on the patio. That was the whole mix. And then the 3 bullet points, they call out the sections that were bolded in your packet, guidance from the CDC, the federal CDC, and then the 3rd bullet is Public Health Madison-Dane County that pertain to eating in communal spaces where we feel operationally, given what it would take to space kids out, what it would take to have students to eat in their classroom and then move the students someplace while we came in and disinfected the classrooms, and expectations from Dane County on maintaining student groupings, we see lunch as a very significant hurdle here. So that was our number one reason why we're recommending the abbreviated day. The second thing is, while some students, like some of us, can video conference for an entire day, we have many students even today that are really stretched by the amount of video conferencing they have. And to go to a full day, a 6.5-hour day hybrid schedule would mean those students, even with passing times, would be putting in over 5.5 hours of video conferencing. And we know we have students that would be very difficult for. And the third is that we have been getting, we feel, a lot of productive student support out of the contact time, and we would like to retain it at least on entry into the hybrid. But of these 3, the one that we really see as the very difficult challenge given the guidance that we have to operate under is lunch. We could go on to the next slide. Now, as you've noticed, and this certainly came up in our discussions with our building teams, this is a little different approach than what is currently happening at the elementary school, where you have hybrid sections and you have virtual sections. This proposal is for combined sections. And the reason why we would have all students, whether they were all remote, or whether they were hybrid, in a single section is for reasons that are outlined below. First of all, more synchronous instructional time. Even when I'm scheduled to be at home in the hybrid model, I'm zooming in to class. And so that effectively doubles the pacing through the curriculum versus not having combined sections. Secondly, it allows us for singletons and doubletons, which is what we call courses that have one section for that class or two sections for that class. It allows us to staff and run those efficiently without adding additional staffing. If you had a singleton class, like say Principles of Engineering, and you had to unpack that into two hybrid sections, plus potentially some students might opt for virtual, you've taken one section and now we have to schedule three. And maybe numbers work out so you can consolidate kids and modify their schedules, but that's going to happen with other singletons and doubletons across the schedule. Very problematic, which is why when you look at what other schools around the state are doing, you're seeing these combined sections as the most common approach when you try to integrate your virtual kids or your remote kids into the on-site. The other thing is, if students do need to miss time for quarantine, they don't have to switch sections. They're already in their section, they're just participating from home versus participating on site. And because of the nature of the middle school and high school program, when we go to hybrid, we will not be able to bubble off students tightly in groups of 10 or 20 or 40. Students, by nature of the schedule, they'll be reduced because some students will be remote, and then we'll have two different hybrid groups. But students will be passing between classes and mixing across sections, especially at the high school. So obviously we hope for the best, but if we do have any situations, the likelihood is that we would have greater quarantine needs than we do with the design of the elementary program. So a solution that allows us to keep from switching students by sections if they need to quarantine is pretty desirable when you move to a hybrid model. The last is that teachers don't have to prep for an in-person section and a remote section. So that's the good news. Now there are disadvantages too, and we note these. The biggest disadvantage that I think everybody appreciates is while the teacher may not have to prep for an in-person section and a remote section for the same class, now in that section, they're instructing some students right in front of them, and they're instructing some students who are zooming in at a distance from their homes. And I don't think there's any way to sugarcoat it. That's complicated. We hear from other high schools in the state that are doing it, that they feel it's successful for them. Now, I think something we need to recognize is they started the year that way. They don't know any different experience, whereas our teachers and students have started the year in all remote, and this will definitely be a shift. If we could go to the next slide. And again, this just lays out our next planning steps. There's quite a few on here, and then we'll open it up to your questions. I'm sure you have them for myself and Brian and Jeff. We need to finalize our processes for building access and health forms. What we're doing with enhanced remote and watching what's happening and learning from our elementary colleagues is providing us with a lot of information, but we'll have to get these resolved. The high school is a very large building, and even in a hybrid model, we're talking many students. We will need to work with John Kramer's team and the custodians and finalize our disinfecting plans for classrooms and bathrooms. how that works in the day. Are we going to have to take bathrooms offline for parts of the day to sanitize them properly? We will have to, and you've heard this before, monitor what our requirements are for contact tracing. Do we have the capacity as a system to add in 2 grades at the middle school and 4 grades at the high school? What's our substitute teacher availability like? Because we know so far that has been a constraint that we recognize as a crimp in the hose, but we've been able to work through it so far. The more students we bring in, we'll just have to see how that goes. This does involve using technology a little differently than we currently are. Herb and his team are going to be working in the near future on setting up demonstration classrooms so we can get our teachers practicing with that and seeing what kind of training we might need. Do we need to make some modifications to the kit? We are working off of recommendations we've heard from other schools that are actually using this delivery model right now, so we think it's going to be close, but we do want to get some pilot classrooms up. We will need to communicate the details very clearly to all concerned, including families, because we're going to have to come back to families and ask them to update their hybrid versus remote preferences for their students that they put on the registration forms back in July. A lot has changed since then. We expect people are going to make very fresh choices with updated information. We need to make sure everybody is crystal clear on what hybrid looks like and what remote looks like, so they feel they're making a well-informed decision. Once we know what our hybrid and remote numbers are like, we will then have to create 2 balanced hybrid groups. We will continue to collaborate and communicate with other public and private schools in Dane County and across Wisconsin to share practices and learn. A lot of our ideas about the technology aspect to what we're proposing we've received from other schools. In Dane County, we don't have very many students at the secondary level that have been on campus until just this week. But as Edgewood opens up, as Madison Country Day brings more grades in, also St. Ambrose and Abundant Life, we do intend to make sure we're in communication with our neighbors, because they're operating under the same Dane County orders that we are. So they're the most comparable colleagues to learn these lessons from, and so we'll be well prepared when the time comes. So again, there's a lot in there. Obviously people and you may have some questions about why this is shaped up the way it has. We've tried to address those, but we certainly look forward to answering your questions.
Right. I guess the one thing that I'd like to clarify from the get-go, Tim, and you referenced it several times, is the order or under requiring distance being kind of a controlling factor in a lot of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And while you were talking, I was just looking up at the various orders that Dane County's come out with, and I wonder if we could just clarify exactly what order we're looking at. Because there is a subtle but important distinction I think it's been made over time in how the county has changed the language. So order number 8 said ensuring students are at least 6 feet from other students and wear face coverings. Mm-hmm. Order number 9 says ensuring students and employees with face coverings are at least 6 feet from others to the greatest extent possible, mm-hmm. which is a pretty big change. So are we under the assumption that we have to absolutely have that 6 feet in order to operate and have kids in class? Because that language with the wording to the greatest extent possible seems to say it's not required.
So the county language has become a little more flexible. That is true. The science hasn't changed.
Right, I'm not suggesting we change it or do anything different.
So, but to illustrate, I mean, you know, in other counties, they certainly have approached this a little more flexibly. And, you know, I just to kind of put some context, Some schools we look at as peers that have dashboards available that I looked at this morning were Arrowhead, Oconomowoc, and Kimberly. And again, we look at our peers, and they don't operate under a strict 6-foot rule the way we have up to this point here. So, with the information, Kurt shared with you about our additional positives and quarantines at the high school, as of, with that information, we have 0.4% of our high school enrollment in isolation or quarantine. Arrowhead, as of their website this morning, was at 3.3% in isolation or quarantine. Oconomowoc was at 6.5%, and Kimberly was at 8.4% in isolation or quarantine. Now, all of these schools are doing a really nice job implementing their procedures, but they're different distancing than we have. Now, again, I'm not here to, characterize, whether these numbers are high or low, but I think as a school becomes, particularly with high school and middle school where kids are passing between classes already, the more opportunities you open up, sooner or later you're going to have a higher likelihood of greater numbers. Now, that's not true for everybody. I mean, and actually I've got a call with the Muskego administrator tomorrow, but, Muskego's got very low numbers right now. But I to kind of answer your question, Mike, we could be a little more flexible, but it would probably come with some consequences.
I can add to that, Mike. When we looked at even bringing in like our elementary, the language, I believe in that order, and I haven't paid particular attention to that language specifically in the last order because it still kind of maintains the spirit of what they're trying to do. But when we brought back our elementary earlier on, it was 6 feet to the degree possible. And when we defined that with public health, they defined it to mean you can't do 3 feet desks. They want you to do 6 feet, but they realize that in the operation of a school, 6 feet is not always going to be able to be adhered to at every moment or every day for every activity. So that's and that's, I think, what we're trying to build most of these models off of, and kind of our classroom capacities as we work forward is, how do you do the best that you can? Generally trying to keep 6 feet, but also knowing that in the interactions and the work of the day, there may be points in time when we don't.
And where it becomes crucial is in the contact tracing piece, because if you're closer than 6 feet for that time frame, then you are a close contact. So by maintaining 6 feet to the greatest extent possible, and as Randy said, one of the specific examples they used where they quickly recognized that you can't forever stay 6 feet away in a classroom. So a student has to sharpen their pencil. They have to walk by, I'd have to walk by Jack, pencil sharpener's over here, sharpen my pencil. I encroached on his 6 feet for that moment as I was walking by him. And it's really, that 6 feet is critical in maintaining that the best opportunity for us not to have to close a classroom down because we've now determined that the whole class is a close contact. So that's the critical piece to that, trying to maintain 6 feet as much as we possibly can.
Are there other questions?
So moving to a hybrid model, we would lose the enhanced model. So you had a student that wanted to be virtual, but was needed one class, like an AP Bio. He couldn't just choose to come in for those labs.
So, I think that depends,
If he's paying for college credit.
It would be something we'd have to look at, right? So a kid only wants to come in for one course, could they? It is, every time what I will say with the hybrid is every decision you make, it has 5 or 10 or 50 different consequences down the road. So, or things that you couldn't have possibly imagined. It's, any hybrid model that we can come up with, there are going to be consequences that come with it. We have thought a lot about how we could manage things like that. Could the kid come in for one? Do they have to come in for study halls? Can you eliminate certain things? Once you get into a situation where kids are just picking and choosing certain classes, I don't know how we would manage that as far as attendance. And it is one of those things where we'd have to set some parameters. Are they coming or are they not coming? Because I want to come this week because there's a lab, but I want to be virtual for the next 2 weeks. I think that we would have, there's a lot to think about that. And my preference would be is you're picking one, but there's going to be a time where a kid, because of maybe their illness or they're in close contact, the reason that we created the model the way we did is then it would be fluid. I can go in, I can go out. If something comes up, I'm exposed for a couple weeks, I can step right back into it. Any other model that you put together, it wouldn't be that fluid, and we also aren't moving the curriculum forward at that point. So, but Ryan, that is a good idea. I just don't know how
Right,
how
that's
it
what I
works
was
for
just
some
asking
kids.
if that was
Yeah.
even, so.
I mean, again, there are going to be trade-offs with all of these. Now, one positive aspect, yeah, and again, we can't make any promises, but one thing that would happen with the abbreviated day is Wednesdays are still an asynchronous day for all the kids. And you still have the contact time in the afternoon. So the time available to do something different would not be very much different than we have today. And we just kind of have to look at the match of teachers and students. But if we had an all-remote student who needed a lab, maybe just for that lab in maybe a low-density situation, would we have time? Potentially, yes. But again, all of these things have to work together.
Jeff, this is more a question for you with the middle school hybrid. The thing, really the only thing that caused me to pause was the 35-minute class time. Knowing as a former teacher when our days were cut short because of pep rallies, assemblies, and the 35 minutes was never enough. So I guess the question is more, how does your staff feel about that? I can say from a parental perspective, that was the concern I had with my grandson going into first grade. I would love 10 or 15 minutes more per the two classes they have. That being said, being there the way it is has been such a bonus for him and his attitude that if we can't get that 10 minutes, I'd rather have him there than not have it because we can't make that work. But in terms of your school, what's your teacher reaction in the committee? Is that enough? Is there a way, is it the busing gap where maybe we could get more time added on, or it just seemed to me a little bit short?
So the day itself is due to busing. Like the
Right.
8:45 to 12:45 is really, that was the premise we had, that either we went to a full day or this was the window we
Yeah.
had based on navigating the AM PM thing with the elementary schools. So in that sense, yes. The other piece of this that I think adds to it is our commitment to the advisory program. We had a lot of staff trained over the summer, knowing that not only within our own district, but across Dane County and really across the nation, we've seen an increased focus on making sure that our kids are not only getting the academic focus from their teachers, but also the focus on their growth as human beings and their social and emotional development. And I think in the middle school, we're in that critical time. And so that little extra kind of community building, helping kids kind of feel connected. We have a lot of 7th graders that have never been into our middle school yet and are still feeling kind of disconnected to school. And our ability for our teachers to meet with those kids one-on-one and build relationships and help lower some of that anxiety is a real focal point, and I think it's paying off some dividends for getting our kids engaged in classes that are only 35 minutes. To get to your point about the 35 minutes being short, yeah, 35 minutes is short, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of people who think 47 minutes are short. And so, how's your staff feel? Well, I have staff who would love to have 90-minute classes. I have some who would say, please don't give me 90-minute classes. I mean, it reflects kind of our community in many ways, and is there a sweet spot in there? That discussion's been going on for years. And so I think the hard part in looking at the 35-minute classes is trying to step back and say, are we still getting the interactions that we need for kids to learn. And I would say for the most part, our teachers overall feel pretty good about it. You know, they would love more time, but we all want more time. I think that's why we're sitting in here tonight. And so we feel like because we can still get to kids outside of our asynchronous time and have kids either meeting individually or in groups, because we're meeting with kids one-on-one during our advisory program and really getting to know them that way, that the minute trade-off for instruction in that block of time, we're actually getting some more bang for our buck outside of that, and then we're allowed to kind of open up our asynchronous time for kids to explore in different ways, engage in the curriculum in different ways, and actually get our teachers to be trying some things that we know for a long time have been really good instructional practice, but until we've been forced to kind of do it, we haven't really had the opportunity to. And so it's been bumpy, and there are a lot of days where I think the 35 minutes is too short. But I think overall, we are in a place where I think our staff is pretty happy. I also know that, you know, when you get kids in front of a computer screen and you don't have that feel when you're in a classroom, that mere presence of a teacher to help kind of keep order in a classroom. By the time you get to 35 minutes in a Zoom meeting, kids are starting to struggle to stay engaged, and I think it's a good time to take a break then and shift to the next subject. But, you know, in an actual classroom setting, yeah, I think everybody would agree 35 minutes is too short.
So for both middle school and high school, is passing time separate from those time slots?
Yes. Well, there's like 35 minutes and like a 10-minute passing time or whatever it is, or 7 minutes.
Thank you.
Can't keep all the numbers straight, but yeah.
Jeff, are your current time slots 35 minutes?
Currently, we're at 35 minutes, yes, that's correct.
So you're really going to do the same in person that you're doing?
Yeah, you know, that's kind of the nature, really. I mean, when you look at, and this is to Mike's point about distance, you know, even if we were to shave it down to 5 feet or down to 4 feet, which I'm not advocating for, please, that no, we're on camera, don't send me emails, people. I'm just saying, if we were even to do that, like, you still don't have kids working in close proximity together in groups and engaging in real conversation. So we're going to have a trade-off even when we have kids in person. It's not going to be what I think people hope it will be, and what we would hope it would be either. But yeah, they are 35 minutes now, and it would be easy for us, like to Brian's point, to shift in and out of this model if we needed to for a variety of different reasons, based on whether our community, load for the COVID is a problem, or if it's just locally because we're having cases increased.
Jack?
Can I speak?
Yes. Sorry, Jack.
No, I guess, I respect what you guys are doing, and I respect what the teachers are doing and so forth, and, it's a challenging time. I guess, as we start opening up school, we're talking about 2 week, basically on a 2 week window. We're in the middle of October, virtually. We're coming into Thanksgiving. We're coming into Christmas. Are we going to be ready to execute, the plans that you're putting in place?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, we can put the plan in place. There's still concerns about staffing. The current model that we're in, staffing is an issue. So when a teacher goes out, it's either we're trying to fill the sub by in-house or me or the assistant principals. So I've been subbing for the last few weeks, as have the assistant principals. So can we do this? Absolutely, no problem. The reality, though, is going to be staffing. Do we have the staffing to do it? Can we do it? Do we have the subs to come in and help? Right now, we don't have any subs picking up any days. We're either doing it in-house or we're doing it ourselves. So we are doing it, and we're all pitching in. Everybody's pitching in to do this. There's no doubt that we can do it. It's just the reality of, can we do it and have anybody come in and help us if a teacher goes out. Right now, if we would have, let's just say, a kid goes through their schedule, they end up being COVID now. We have 4 teachers who, if they were in close proximity, if they have to quarantine, we don't have 4 subs. We don't have 1 sub. So that's the concern, is the staffing part. Yeah, absolutely. We can come up with any plan. We can do it. We can carry it out. I'm confident of that. I'm confident of our staff. confident that we can plan it. My major concern is that we're going to have the staffing to carry it out once we start. Because then we could be in a situation where if you get 4 staff members out, that for all the kids that are on that whole block of the, let's say, Monday, Tuesday, we might not have enough staff to deliver. That's the concern.
Yeah, and that's a piece that Brian's been working with the current subpool and also looking at ways that we can kind of enhance that and make sure that we know who's going to be willing at what levels to come in. So that's an important piece.
Yeah, when I said yes, Jack, I echo what Brian said. It's like, from a logistics standpoint, like, we can get kids in the building, we have a schedule in place, we know how to probably get them in and out, and we'd have to tidy up some things with how we would make sure we were cleaning and keeping people as safe as possible from that standpoint, but we have enough of a structure to do it. The stuff that we don't know about, we're not going to find out until we get into it. Like, when people get sick, we're going to have to figure out, can we or can we not continue to move forward? Or are we going to have to be able to flip back into virtual because we can't? And that's one of the, I think, again, not to say it a third or fourth time, but that's one of the advantages to this shortened day model, is it does allow us to be flexible and get back and forth in and out of this model if we have to. You know, and there's other concerns about the hybrid model that I would have and I'd like to share, but I don't know if this is the time or the place for that. But it is something that we could do if we needed to.
Other questions for Brian, Tim, or Jeff? Thanks, guys. I want to take just a moment before we move off this item.
Thanks, guys.
Was a piece that we talked about at a previous meeting. A few board members have approached me about, like, what is a projected timeline? Now, you have to approach this from a respect of, let's just take a few constants and say that they're all moving forward in a positive way. So that means disease mitigation is at a level that stays constant and we don't have spikes that are going to impact us. The piece that Brian talked about with regards to sub-availability and all of our ability internally to manage it are all predicated on this. If one thing gets delayed, the whole thing gets pushed. So that's what it's based off of. So this is just if this calendar, board members, is in your packet for you to review. I just put it in different colors here so it showed up a little better. Tonight we're here on the 12th. So a week ago we agreed that we would bring back 3-4. We'd have medical advisory and board meet tonight. We've made a decision this evening to move ahead with 3-4. That's happening here on the 26th. If I move on to the next month, we're going to move our medical advisory committee. Oops, that's October, sorry. To the 9th of October. That's right before our 9th board meeting. It would be 2 weeks then after 4th and 5th have been, or 3rd and 4th have been back, to have an opportunity for us then to review our data, see how we're doing, see how things have gone with substitutes, contact tracing, disease levels. If this was an area that we felt that we as a committee and as a board wanted to move forward with 5-6, we would then do the exact same process that we've just been doing with 3-4. We have letters going out to 5th and 6th grade parents. We have a return point. We're working around Thanksgiving here. So what I did was I just moved this in a very similar manner to how we did this with our fall break. And that would mean that the earliest then 5th and 6th return would be right after Thanksgiving on the 30th. So these are all written in pencil type dates. You then take the 5th and 6th grade. You want them to have an opportunity where we have a few weeks to see how their mitigation and how their integration came. You'd kind of repeat this process. And then you would come back in December, again with the medical advisory group, the board meeting having a consideration point. Obviously, we're running into winter break here. There would be a point then where I just didn't want to start this right after we returned from break and thought that there should be a week gap there. So the earliest then you could see a potential, if we're breaking 7 and 8 out as a grade level span, would be the 11th of January. You then have a few weeks here where we can get some additional information of what's occurring. We have some shortened weeks here with students. I just projected out here that on February 1st, we could have, again, another medical advisory. That would be probably like an additional board meeting type of a setting. And then kind of moving to what Jeff and Brian were talking about, then potentially then a 9/12 re-entry point here. Now this is all predicated on kind of bringing back groups of students in a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9/12 all at once, and trying to build at least 2 to 3 weeks between those to get a sense of data on how the previous one went, and then also a gap to implement. So this is just a high-level, in-pencil type of a picture of it. It is all impacted by a number of things that could happen with regards to other factors within our district.
So, listen to our principals. I think it's true. K-5, K-6 as well. And the staffing, you know, we've been talking about trackers, health staff, what have you. Would it be worth our while, as we're looking to expand the number of plants, facilities we have open, to actually hire a full-time sub for each building, or in preparation for that, so that we have personnel available, we pay them like we normally would, and use them throughout the district to help mitigate that staffing. And I don't know, Brian, if there's a pool of people who would hire on to do that. I know certain school districts have full-time subs. Verona particularly I know does, but I don't know how big a field there is for even recruiting that. But to me, that would be something we certainly ought to consider, so that isn't a stumbling block as we continue to move more bodies into the school. And, you know.
So if we did something like that, you know, hired a few subs that are just ours, can we accelerate bringing, you know, high school back? You know, you're looking at almost March.
You are.
And, you know,
If
now
you're
you
looking
got
at- if you're
March,
looking at
April,
trend.
May. Does it make sense to bring them back at all?
Right.
You know, if we're talking about educational models, you know, and I hear the staffing issue, you know, but if we took Mark's suggestion and talked through that and built up the staffing model, you know, we've already approved 3 contact tracers.
Sure.
We've got the nursing staff. You got the nursing sub pool. You know, so we've got these things put in place. So, you know, I think what the community is looking at is how do we get our kids back in school? You know, just from a mental health standpoint. The other thing I'm concerned about is, and I think I've expressed it a number of times, is just the inequity in education. And we're really expanding that educational gap. The longer we, you know, keep these kids out of school.
We're not pulling on the same rope in this town. I mean, we are not helping each other out when we have taken kids out of this county to go play in large tournaments. And we can't help that, but everyone's looking to us to solve the problems to the school thing. We're not pulling in the same way. Our beliefs are not the same.
And I agree with that, Brian.
What's that?
I agree.
Well, there's no reason to rush if the data doesn't say rush into something. Why would we put kids in the community at risk if the health numbers don't say it? February would be fine if the numbers say it's fine. But people, you know, I'm going to let parents choose which way they're going to send their family into, you know, into this. But I can also vote if we don't have the capacity to take care of our kids the right way.
Yeah, so this was built off of the concept. You had to have some variables walking into putting this projection together. It was built off of a couple things we talked about between medical advisory and the board here. Was one, once you bring a group in, to have a period of time to review the data, to see the impact. That was the first thing. And the second part was whether you brought in like 7, 12 all at once, or you broke those into 2 groups. So that was the piece that I think the last iteration or last conversation, at least I took away from our meeting here, was wanting to do 7, 8 potentially as separate entities, given that that's a big chunk to bring all of them back at once. And it's probably the most challenging group to bring back, just from regard of cohorting, et cetera. So that's what that's built off. So I don't disagree with you, Jack. It's as you start to move forward with it, if anything impacts us, it just keeps pushing it out. And you're right. At what point is there that this isn't even viable? And then the other question is, how quickly can you move it and still be true to what you're trying to set out as your process to bring kids back? So it's a push-pull on both sides.
And a big piece, so the operational piece, we've got to be able to see if we can handle it. I think we've learned a lot from the K-2 experience so that we're prepared to handle the 3-4. But with each iteration we bring back, it really challenges the entire system. And we have to be able to make sure that our operational system can handle each new quadrant of kids. You start looking at the high school, I mean, you're potentially talking 800 kids coming in at one time. That's a ton. One thing maybe to help our high school kids, we might want to look at, would we like to flip-flop 7th, 8th grade with 9, 12? To get the high school kids in sooner. But I don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea.
Yeah. This is an illustrative example,
Yes.
so it can flex different ways. And the question, Jack, you asked the team when they were here is, will we be ready? Absolutely. I mean, we'll commit to that. But we also, if we're going to do a staggered piece, this is kind of the timelines it starts to lay out with. And I guess I'd be open to other feedback, is if you think is there something that you'd want to see differently as we start to look at these? Because as we start to bring them back and start to have these conversations with medical advisory and the board, I think it would be valuable to know kind of at what staggered approach the board is comfortable with seeing some of these.
You know, we brought it K-12. Each class is, about 300 kids? You know, so we've got that grouping. We're going to be bringing 3, 4, so we've almost doubled the number of students. So we should get a relatively good handle. Can we handle the doubling of students? And it should give us some indication of the contact resources that we need. So wouldn't it be logical then to say that once we get this information, that we could potentially double the next phase?
I think you have two very different buildings with very different grades, with very different interactions during the day. I mean, K-4, they have a very set schedule and they all pretty much interact the same. But you can't say the same thing about 7th, 8th, where you're getting a lot more of individual classes per kid. You have a lot of electives there. Now, nowhere near the high school, but you still have a decent amount of electives in 7, 8.
But 6,
that
5,
creates
6
a lot of
are
difference.
still cohort, right?
Or 5, 6
Generally.
or more cohort.
So-
That's
so,
more under the elementary
you know,
model, right?
You know, so basically you could go all the way to K-6, and then bring your 7th, 9, you know, at a later time, you know. And I think what that does is it brings high school in sooner, potentially.
Did you say 7, 9? Is that what you said? 7?
Well, 7, 12.
Right, 7, 12, right.
Getting tired here.
Yeah. Well, there was conversation at one point, do you bring in like a smaller group into like the high school? That's been, I've heard that feedback from others, that's what I was just clarifying.
Because sooner or later, it doesn't make sense to.
I agree. I agree.
You know, if we're talking about educational models that, you know, you're virtual and then you come in, you know, when is that? It doesn't make sense.
And I mean, the piece that I think Jeff was getting at was, there is a question of which model's better? Is a hybrid model better, or is a virtual model better? And the answer is probably dependent on the kid. But I think from an instructional piece, that's a piece we've had internally discussed as far as how much time is in person and how are we putting our efforts towards that versus what does that look like in a hybrid. And is the hybrid, we view it as better because we get if you put a value towards in-person, social, emotional, those pieces, there's a value to it. You can't argue that. If you argue it from a pure instructional curriculum standpoint, you can kind of go either way, depending on the student and their learning style. So I mean, that is a piece that plays into this as well. Like I said, this was illustrated. It was just to kind of show you as per what I've heard talking about how we would break it out. I think initially we had even looked at like 7-12. It is a big jump with a lot of kids. But it's certainly a piece, I think, that as we've done any iteration, we learn through what we've done, and we see what the impact is. I know Brian's piece has been looking at other districts have done where they've brought in and they've hired exactly Mark's model. I mean, you're basically bringing them as long-term subs with. They've got full pay and that benefit piece that goes with it. It's a cost. Certainly that's a piece you just accept as part of doing business. It's also a matter of can you find the people to do it, and then does that meet your need or not? So those are kind of and there's some of them, not sure how Verona's, if that's working, but it's a piece that I know Brian and I talked about that exact model this afternoon.
Brian, is there any intent to repeat your substitute class that you did earlier?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I would say looking at two different models to go around that, Joan. One I would say that I'd say first step would be to develop just a digital training that I can offer to individuals. And then, I think you could certainly schedule, that particular day draws in, almost all the administrators, or at least I would say almost all the administrators from different buildings take part in at least one of the sessions. And so it draws a lot of personnel resources. And for example, this year that we had 12 folks in that class, 9 accepted the interview. They wanted to do an interview to become part of the pool. We interviewed them, invited them in, and at this point, none of them have taken a position. So I think it's that, that balance.
Do you have any idea why they're not?
No. I mean, that's part of the challenge is that, I've heard what I heard, and I'm not arguing with what Brian Borowski said, because that is the experience they've had right now. The subs that we've looked for at the high school level have been in special education, day-to-day subs, short-term positions. Those have never been easy to fill, and so that is a data point. I don't know that it's one that I can extrapolate out to other positions that are, when we start to ask for day-to-day subs in different roles. I had sent the communication out. I surveyed the subs again at the end of last week. I heard back from about 81 out of the 138 that are in the pool. I've learned that 34 of those have said that they're very unlikely to start accepting any positions, but the other 40 some are, and they've really distributed themselves in terms of what they would take across the grade levels. I think the proof will be in the pudding, right? And I'll start to see, we will start to see as we have more grades in person, will these folks start to take the openings that will come up, because they will come up. I mean, that's a very normal, typical year. Sub positions do come open in the best of circumstances, and we're not in the best of circumstances. And so, but until I start to see that, I don't know. I don't know what to interpret from it, because I can ask them, and and I'll hear from those that I hear from, and but until they start to take positions, and in terms of like Mark's question, some districts have taken and gone and hired basically building level subs, and it's, I would say, very evenly split. So, many have not, and I would say, how's it working? That's right now, almost any sub position, almost any subsystem is working right now. We're in the first month of school. How will it be working when we get to November, December, January, March? That's a big question, and no one knows that answer right now. And so, are there folks?
Does it usually taper off anyway in a normal year?
No.
Or do they increase the number?
It basically, think of like it goes and then it basically tops out and then pretty much stays there to finish the school year. So our traditional highest need is, you're going to probably hit your peak in March, and you're more or less going to stay there. But part of that also is you start to have coaches that you've got to fill. Coaching, coaches that are out on trips. We're not potentially going to have that, or we might. So that's part of the spring usage, but it's just you get into that last third of the year, your need for subs is at its high point.
Any other questions on this? Then we will move on to the review of fall co-curricular programs.
Right. A couple things we want to talk about here tonight. In your packet, you see a few reports from Aaron. I'm going to give him the opportunity to review what's going on with our fall activities, a little bit of what's happening with WIAA, and then as we start to move forward in some of the public comments you heard tonight were with regards to how we're going to handle other groups returning, or some of their contact days or open gym times. We want to discuss that with you. And then we heard comments with regards to like the Waunakee Wave. I think that's an example of an outside group that has traditionally used our facilities, and kind of the things in our thoughts administratively with regards to facility use, outside groups, and then what we need just to maintain the programs that we are offering and bringing back throughout the next number of months. So Aaron, if I can just have you kind of walk through, let's start off with, and the kids talked about tonight, the positivity of the fall activities. If you can just talk about some of the things that we've had in place and how those have gone, that'd be a great place to start.
Yeah, so our non-contact sports, individual sports, were able to compete this year. So that's cross country, girls golf, girls tennis. Golf and tennis, this week marks their state tournaments. The girls golfers just finished the first round at Blackwood Run today. They play again tomorrow. Tennis will be playing this weekend down at Lake Geneva. And cross country will be starting up in about a week and a half here with their sort of post-season run. Things have gone well overall. We've had to do a lot of training of the kids to get them used to staying apart from each other, because they just kind of naturally congregate. Coach Dave Kettner had a nice thing. He about every 5 minutes does a 6-foot check, reminds the kids that we're spreading out, that we're staying apart. And we've had a lot of positive feedback from parents and the kids about what we've been able to offer our middle school families. So those have really done some positive things here in the fall. In regards to the WIAA, the only real update there is at the September 19th board meeting, the WIAA did release some of their guidelines for competition for winter sports. Those are all in a recommendation format. We are held to the Dane County Public Health, so that's what we have to hew to, not to what the WIA recommends. But the other thing they did do is they altered the number of contact days schools were allowed that weren't competing this fall. So fall and spring sports were allowed to have 15 contact days. In a quote-unquote traditional year, a contact day had to happen in the summer. It couldn't happen once your school year started. That requirement was also removed. A contact day is the WIA's term for what we might call, what you might look at as a regular practice. In a contact day event, the coach can assemble, organize, and direct just as he would or she would during a normal practice in a regular season practice. An open gym is the WIA's generic term for what it sounds like, which is the coach is there merely in a supervisory role. In the gym, they open it up, they turn on the lights, they lower the hoops, they roll out the basketballs, and their job there is simply to ensure that kids are recreating safely. Anything that goes on there has to be directed by the kids. It can't be done as a surrogate either of the coach, so the coach can't be feeding the captains or the kids what they want to do. But they did extend the number of contact days that spring sports and fall sports were allowed to have. So I've been working with what I've just been calling what I call there a consortium of the Badger Conference schools with our alternate fall sports. Those were the sports back in August that we moved to this alternate season. In most sports cases, that season occurs March and April. So you're looking at about 8 to 9 week seasons. Some of them dip into that first week of May. You can see there kind of the schools that we are working with the schedule. Like I said, they're Badger Conference schools. Janesville Parker, Janesville Craig, remember this year is supposed to be their first year as part of the Badger Conference for football. So if you're not used to seeing them listed as a Badger Conference school, that was supposed to be new for this fall, but in this situation, of course, we've had to change that. But those are all Badger Conference schools, and we've been working with to create some schedules. So currently, as it stands, those alternate fall sports are boys soccer, football, girls volleyball, and girls swim. And each of those sports are looking at about an 8-week season and about 7 to 9 competitive events during that season for our different levels. So that's what we've been doing there.
Aaron, before we get too far.
Yep.
Contact days.
Yes.
So is it basically if Coach Rice wanted to run a contact day, it would be for the entire team, or is it per kid, where you could break them into small groups?
So a contact day is one day, regardless of how many kids are there.
Okay.
So if you look at the setup, because of our group size numbers and limitations, we do have to make some changes. So if you look at that spreadsheet, you'll see little notations in there where some of the coaches are looking to break them up by grade. Some of the other sports are looking to break them up by position. And so that means if it's a lineman day that day, and there's a dozen linemen for a football example, that's one of those contact days. Now we're down to, say, 10. So if you look on there right now, we've got 4 dates for 2 weeks, so that's 8. Coach Rice would still have 2 days left to kind of look at how he might bring in some other things. Yeah, so that's one of the challenges with those days is our numbers and the group size limitations that we have. Our outside sports aren't even the most dramatic example because we can still be in groups of 25. Our indoor sports, girls basketball, boys basketball, where we have, as I mentioned in there, last year we had 120 basketball players, boys and girls in the high school. Well, we can only have 10 on a court by public health rules. So, the simple math there is we need 12 courts, whether that's at the high school, at the middle school, in order to give every kid an opportunity to get on the court. So that is definitely a challenge to whether it's a contact day, whether it's an open gym, or whether it's going to be scheduling practices here for a winter season, depending on what we can do.
And one more clarification. We didn't make the decision not to have girls swimming in the fall, right? The coach decided to move it to the spring.
So after sitting down with the coach, and then sitting down with Christy Knacker, we made that decision to move it based on the challenges that are presented and not being able to host a full meet at an event, along with not being able to practice a full meet. So
Shall we clarify that for the public?
Yeah.
Aaron?
Mark? Yes.
So, just looking at our high school facility, the old gym does have 2 side courts, so could you have 10 on each side court?
So the way it's been explained to me from public health is we can have, the old gym's isn't necessarily the best example. The middle school and intermediate are, because we can drop the curtain and we have a demonstrable separation between the 2 groups. Now, as long as those 2 groups stay completely separate, we are okay. Where this group size issue poses a challenge is once these groups intermingle. And so when we talk about things like a gymnastics event, where yes, we can do a gymnastics event to keep girls 6 feet away from each other, but we can only have 10 people there. And there's more than that on a gymnastics team. So once those girls come into the meet and that other group is already there, even though there's only 10 people physically in the gymnasium, your group size is now larger than 10. And we would be from my understanding, would be a violation of public health. In the old gym, we don't have a curtain. So when we have a basketball event, we can't necessarily use both courts unless I get further clarification from public health that if we can use some other way to have a demonstrable barrier between the 2 groups.
But in the areas where you have the curtain dropped down, you could do 10 and 10.
Yep. So you're looking at,
So in the field house, how many courts can you separate there?
So we only have the 1 curtain. So
only one curtain.
We can drop the curtain and put 10 on each side.
Okay.
We have 12 courts in the district. 4 in the field house, 1 right now that we know for sure in the old gym, 2 at the middle school, 2 at the intermediate, and 3 at the elementary schools total. So you're looking at basically having to use, if you're going to have them all practice at one time, you're looking at using almost every court we have for our indoor high school sports. That's the unique challenge that the winter presents to us for activities, or really indoor activities present to us.
And so is swim different or not?
So swim, again, they can have 10 people in their area. There is a concept called a super lane, which allows you to get some more people in the pool. Basically what would happen is you would have, instead of 1 lane, the 8 lanes in the pool, you would take out basically every other lane marker. And now I would be, not very good without drawing a picture, but you basically have 2 people in lane 1 and 2, and a 3rd person on that middle side. And you would swim in like a clockwise circle around it. But again, now you still have to maintain that 6 feet while you're swimming in that circular motion. We've had 6, I guess today would be, today would be number 9 for opens for those new swim dates. Christy wanted to see how that worked before we looked at this concept of super lanes. Either way, we're gonna have probably 36 boys out for boys swim based on our trends. And even in that, we still are gonna need about 3 to 4 hours, 5 hours of time just for the boys swim to practice. So when we look at those other times, we just need a huge amount of facility resources, whether that's time or space, to get our kids, our athletes through. So I did mention I did have just one other thing there. I tried to code it basically red, yellow, green to give you an idea of what can go and what can't go at this point. This is based on Dane County Public Health sports guidelines. So hockey, wrestling, cheer, and dance are all categorized as high risk. So you can have 10 people, you need to maintain social distance and wear masks. At this time, competitions are not allowed. In order to play games, we'd have to reach level 3 of public health sort of data points there. Basketball is categorized as a medium risk. And again, what that means right now is we can have 10 people in a space with masks, maintaining social distance. They are not allowed to compete yet. The other kind of less yellow, those other ones are gymnastics and swim. And they're in a kind of a unique position because individual gymnastic events are considered low risk, but group gymnastic events, which is not something we participate in Waunakee, are not allowed. Swim is in a similar situation. Individual swim events, like the 50 free or something like that, would be considered a low risk activity and would be allowed. But our team relays, we're not allowed to be competing in relay races and hold events in that way. At this point, the only thing that's in the green totally is our ski and snowboard, because it is an outside event. We are allowed, again, outside to have 25 people, social distance. They could compete, but they'd have to maintain social distance. There are some questions, though, with what the ski hills will allow. My governor, Evers' new orders were about indoor public spaces and businesses, but ski hills do have indoor areas, so I don't know how they're looking at that capacity. Also, some of the hills may not be keen on letting the ski teams compete there when they're looking to recover powers from some other spots. So that is definitely something to look at.
Mark?
Before you go to the outside group, do you have any sense where the WIAA is, how they're looking at the winter sports season? We know they moved the fall for those who couldn't compete, and allow some to compete, so what's it looking like for the winter sports?
I would say at this time, based on what they've stated publicly, they will not be adjusting any more of their calendar. It would be, if we are able to compete, they'll welcome us into the schedule as it's written. Otherwise, we would not, there wouldn't be an alternate winter season. That's based on their public statements. And we're basically out of calendar, unfortunately.
Why don't we jump to the other pieces and we'll come back to outside groups in a second. So I know that you've got a few other things here, Aaron, just with regards to even staffing as far as coaches to be able to manage these things with the size and numbers that we have. That's a piece that you're working on and your coaches have articulated to you. Can I have you just talk about the aquatic center for a moment? I think that's a big piece for us with regards to particularly some of the public comments tonight, and then some of the things that we've done just with our current swim team and how we're managing some of those pieces and what are some of our limiting factors there. You've already addressed it to a degree, but your phased reopening plan or kind of thoughts around that?
Yeah, so Christine Acker, our aquatic center director, we really work to develop a plan to really slowly roll out this opening. So like I said, today really marks the start of week 3 of this plan. So we have 2 weeks. Each week we had 4 days that were open, Mondays through Thursdays. So we've been able to get kids into the pool for 45-minute sessions. Once they get out and leave, so they enter through door 25, which if you're familiar with the aquatic center setup, that's actually the emergency exit door through the grass. We don't actually have them coming through the lobby at this time. And they go in, they put their stuff on a little block that's in front of their lane. Once they come in, they're assigned a lane. They turn in their health form, daily health form that their parents have signed off saying that they are healthy. They go in and put their equipment down, they go in the shower, they rinse off, they get in the pool, and they do their laps for that 45-minute session. At the end of that, the lifeguard blows an electronic whistle. Those students get up, towel off, and leave. And then the 2 lifeguards on duty wipe down all those blocks. They go in and wipe down the shower handles and shower heads in that 15-minute intermediate time before the next session comes in. And then the next group of 8 kids come in for the next session. So far, I think things have gone well. A lot of training of the kids in terms of both the lifeguard kids and the swimmers that are coming in. And also getting them trained up on how to sign up on the RegWorks program to make sure that they're signed up in time, because we do have cutoff deadlines. They need to be signed up by noon each day in order to claim their spot for that afternoon or that evening. And what we're finding is the early sessions are very popular, the 3 o'clock, the 4 o'clock, the 5 o'clock. The later ones, the 6 p.m. sessions, are not as popular. That one doesn't seem to be as popular with the kids, but we're definitely some positive things there. And then each night, Brian Hockey's custodial crew has been doing a good job of washing down the deck, making sure we've got the hand sanitizer and the wipes that we need in order to keep that whole area clean, and for the staff, lifeguard staff there to clean in between sessions.
One of the things that is in front of Aaron that you see in board book, and it relates to not only the pool that he's talking about, it relates to outside use of facilities, and it relates to really requests that he's received from coaches with regards to the whole idea of contact time that he alluded to earlier. So in this spreadsheet, what he's put together is really some of the wishes that our coaches would have as far as how they would like to move forward with their contact days, open gyms, etc., in order to kind of meet the needs of some of their athletes. What I've put in board book, and this is a piece that I'd like to get the board's feedback on, is I have a desire to want to support our kids in this endeavor. It's when we can do it well, and it can be a very positive thing for our kids. I also want to do it in a way that we don't overwhelm our system, and that we do it in a way that we can be successful and continue to do it throughout the year as factors allow. So right now what you're seeing is really requests from basically every sport from fall all the way through spring who are desiring to have their contact days, and ideally they'd love to take advantage of all the different opportunities we have, either with outside periods right now through October, early November, and then also trying to capitalize on those things that are happening so that these sports can get them in before their season would traditionally start in late November, early December. The piece that Aaron and I have talked about is, one, how much can we manage? How much and it kind of gets to your point, Jack, of how many kids you're bringing in at once. I mean, these are a lot of students. And as I've talked to a few coaches today, it's not a matter of trying to bring in one group that has 35 kids. If you open it up to spring, you've kind of got to be inequitable to open it up for all. So the piece that was on Aaron's and my discussion was wanting to first of all make sure that we complete the work we're doing that we've started this fall. We have some groups that are still competing and practicing. You have a few groups that still have contact days left. We'd like to be able to try to support those because it's still their fall season. And then looking at these items that fall into the winter sports season and seeing how we can support those contact days. And then at this point, recommending we hold on some of the spring sports. From the respect of, that way we don't have competition between kids who play multiple sports being pulled into different groups. And secondarily, also just being able to manage the number of students that we're working with and programs we have at one time. Now, I value the input of the board on that piece. It also plays into the piece with like outside groups. We heard from like the Waunakee Wave, but as Aaron just explained, kind of what time level it's taking to get our own swimmers through the pool with the numbers that are allowed, trying to figure out how we then can organize and meet the needs of a whole nother team is concerning to us, from not only from a time standpoint, but also just a management, cleaning, etc. standpoint. So from our perspective, it's trying to support our programs first, putting a hold on moving anything, bringing in any outside groups, and then thirdly, trying to manage the number of sports that we're trying to accommodate with contact time at any one time. And for discussion's sake, we would be thinking of these fall sports up through our winter sports, given the timelines that they've provided. So I think, is that Aaron, is that generally what the pieces that we need some feedback and guidance on from the board this evening?
Do you want this in the form of a motion?
I would, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's what we've done in the past. I mean,
I guess one of the comments that I've got is our core competency is education. And in bringing kids back, it's mental health as well. You know, we're not comfortable bringing our high school back until we just saw the February, March. And, you know, I'm not going to support bringing back sports and so forth until we meet our core competency, which is education.
I would make a motion that we deal with the two concepts one at a time. So my motion would be that at this time, we do not allow outside groups to use our facilities.
I'll second that motion.
Is there any discussion?
Aaron, is there any way the wave would fit into the pool, given the limitations?
I would struggle to see how we could meet their.
It sounds impossible to me, but
I mean, without knowing exactly what what they're exactly looking for from us, it's hard to tell you if I can meet their needs. Because they haven't, they brought the request here, but I have not seen exactly what they're looking at.
I mean, it sounds like we're using it almost 6 hours a day right now for the boys-girls programming.
Yeah, right now we're basically, well, I would say, with cleaning and everything like that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's probably 5-6 hours after, from about 3 o'clock on.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So then the next question, there's a recommendation from administration that basically we allow contact time for fall and winter sports and not for spring sports at this time.
Yeah, so this isn't a recommendation for their season to compete.
Right.
This is for them to basically do what we've tried to support all fall, which was for those sports to be able to have their contact days and allow for those. So that's what this piece would be about. I think there's a discussion point in the future of how we're going to deal with winter sports and competitions, but this is with regard to trying to, as a continuation of what we've done this fall with some of those sports, to be able to then kind of the next iteration with that. Part of what's changed is that WIAA added some contact days for some of our fall sports, so that's what you're seeing reflected as the ones that are left, because those were added. And then the other ones were, as we start to move into the winter months, there are days and opportunities for some of those sports to at least have contact days. They have to be within social distancing. So for example, wrestling is truly not wrestling in the sense of what it would normally look like. It's more of a strength, agility, wrestling type environment. So that's what our conversation has been.
Who's ultimately responsible then for watching over these? The wrestling coach or?
No, I think wrestling coach, I think Aaron has taken on a role of having to be part of all of those pieces. There has to be a written plan from any of these that we run through our administrative team. Like usually Kurt's involved, Brian's involved, Aaron, Brian Borowski. We take a look at those, our nursing staff, make sure that they have to follow all the protocols that we've laid out for everything we've been doing since summer. It's the same process.
Mark?
Joan had her hand up first, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I guess I would like to at least think about the outside use for softball, soccer. You know, these kids lost their spring season, and the weather is nice. They have some of their contact days. I mean, I'm assuming this request came from coaches?
Yeah, so
they're willing to
that chart has basically been filled out by the coaches. I asked them to give me your ideal schedule to plan to use those contact days. And so that's what's reflected there, is if it was a quote-unquote perfect world, these are the dates they would want to use
So your piece, Joan,
do
is
their
some of
contact
those.
days.
Not the inside, the old gym, but when they're using an outside field, our October and November is sometimes so much nicer than April.
Sure.
I guess I would like to keep them on the table.
So you're talking, all of these are outside sports.
So the only overlap is track and field and football would both be trying to use Warrior Stadium.
You'd have to work that out.
And athletes in multiple sports, but I guess my question was in a similar line is, rather than excluding the spring sports, if we're going to, rather than having the fall sports, which are going to be played in the spring, late winter, have them share the contact days. So rather than, maybe you split them, so instead of every team getting 10 days, each team gets 7 days. So there's fewer demands on the field. It's not perfect, but it's equitable, because in truth, our fall sports and our spring sports are one and the same now, based on what the WA has done. And it would seem to me, something like that might allow for greater opportunities.
Eddie, when we had the contact tracing, and when we had the spike, if I remember the emails, it was related to some of these contact days.
It was one event involved, 2 events involved things with contact days. So it was 2 events that involved the
Greater than major
and
challenge.
the student. Sure. So that's part of the balance, is trying to figure out, do we want to support these type of pieces? I mean, what we're bringing in, as you heard, 3rd and 4th grade, the enhanced remote piece is bringing in a few hundred more kids. And that was part of why, Jack, I was recommending we look at the winter and fall sports so that we don't get, otherwise I'm starting to add, I don't know what the magic number is, but I'm just trying to figure out where do I have, contact tracing was a piece of at least looking at how we can parcel this out in a way that doesn't overwhelm the system. So that was part of the rationale that Aaron and I have talked about, as far as how do you, in an ideal world, I'd love to do it all, but I'm just worried about how far do you go that then jeopardizes our ability to do other things.
What was the one event that was canceled due to COVID?
Middle school
volleyball. And you canceled that for 3 days?
We didn't have coaches.
Yeah.
We
there's 5 coaches, 4 primary and 1 backup. 2 coaches got wrapped up in the same event, at the same practice. There was a student wasn't there, the coach jumped into the drill. The drill involved the one coach throwing the ball into the players and then them playing. The second coach that was filling in touched the ball. So then that affected both coaches.
So, those were the 2 events, Chad, right?
I just had a question. Open gyms, is there a certain number? Are they?
By WI rule, those are unlimited, because there's not there's no obstruction going on in those.
So what's coach asking for?
So, when you're asking about boys basketball?
Yeah.
I mean, right now, what Dana's asking for would be able to do it 3 times a week until the month from now, until the season starts.
Yeah, what I shared with Aaron is we would put a number on that, so that it doesn't get to a different, if this was something that the board was amenable to, we would put a number on that so that it was not into perpetuity.
Again, even though he or she can't be coaching the kids, they'd be responsible for maintaining the protocols.
And their concept is they have all the baskets down and kids, they'd have small groups come in and then they could do.
But I mean, someone would have to be present so that the basket groups aren't getting together.
That's
That's what
absolutely
correct.
right. Yeah.
I mean, someone would be there supervising.
I guess I'll just cut it and say that my concern, I mean, I hear the idea about maintaining protocols, but what's unsaid in all of this is that these kids are already out doing all this anyway, just across the border. I mean, the headline of the news right now is COVID cases linked to sports tournament in Dells. I'm pretty sure Waunakee players were at that tournament last week. Waunakee Soccer Club is traveling around all over the state. AAU basketball is over the state. I mean, I'm fine with letting things go on like this here, but I'm concerned that in addition to this, they're doing other things that are putting, like Jack said, the educational model at risk. Like, are we going to be able to bring students back in if there's an outbreak because someone went to an AAU basketball tournament and gave it to all of his teammates, and then those teammates then saw other kids and all of a sudden they've got 100 cases in a high school? So, I mean, if we offer this, are there any strings we can put on there that they're not also doing things that are just openly risky, that they can take with their own health, but they're not just taking with the health of the community too? Because I mean, these kids are going to play out the county if they want. We really can't do anything about that, but this is the one thing we can control. How much is it worth it to them?
And I agree with that, Mike. I mean, that's my biggest struggle, is trying to find opportunities for the kids. But like I said earlier, we're not pulling in the same direction in this country. It's not just us. But, I've been told by several parents who want us to go back, well, you can't control that. It's like, no, but we can control what's coming, what's in our district. And that's what we're trying to do, is to make smart moves to protect the kids who are not in these sports or in these curricular activities. They get pulled in and have to miss class time because of people wanting to do their own thing.
So to your point, Brian, there are other opportunities out there for these kids. So if this didn't happen, a lot of those kids are playing, as you mentioned, in the soccer leagues or the AAU basketball, or there's a volleyball club, right? Or is there? I'm not sure, but there's track opportunities. There's timed track events, cross country. There's cross country events. There's the opportunities are out there. So if this didn't happen, the kids have the opportunities. You get rec leagues that they can participate in.
But if we take football, if you have kids doing football in the district and we're putting some rules on it, and there's some restrictions, that's 4 nights a week they can't go join a rec league. And they can't join a club because they won't get enough practice to be allowed to be on the club team. So they're gonna have to pick one or the other. They can't do both with the kind of scheduling you're seeing there. What kid can be on the girls' basketball and then go join a basketball traveling team? They're not gonna let them, because you have to be at practice 3 days a week. So are we helping by doing this? Because I don't see how, these schedules are a lot tighter than we normally see. I mean, they're blocking them 3-4 days a week. You can't join another team.
But just to like, if you look at, let's look at girls basketball and wrestling, they get 5 days total. And that's, so it's done after 5 days.
So that one could. But if they do the open gym part of it.
You know, the boys' open gym is truly, that's a different model. That's correct. I mean, that's what Dana's asking for with the boys' basketball, is more of an open gym model where, one, it doesn't just limit him to 5 days, but it allows them, the most important thing to him is getting kids at the hoops, shooting and getting some of the reps in. So that's it's a little bit of philosophy, but when you look at your point, Dave, wrestling, girls basketball, actually boys basketball is just 5 days, and then volleyball's got the 15, because they haven't done anything yet this fall. And I think that was just because of sizing, number of kids, and lack of the number of coaches to be able to implement it. And then football had days added and soccer had days added per the WIA meeting that was had. So that's the request piece that's coming in. To Jack's point is exactly why I was trying to say, if we're going to do something like this, we should at least limit it to a portion of this at one point, and then you get to spring sports at a point in time at a later iteration. That was kind of our perspective.
I have a hard time not approving the concept, like that we already did that since August up to now for those teams that are, and kids who have some kind of a fall activity. We provided that forum for them, and it doesn't seem to have caused us significant issues. I think these are two positives. And I don't know how many kids participating. I also recognize the stress on the system with having 100% of the plan put into action, which is why I propose the idea of fewer days for all teams, spring and fall sports, so they're treated equally. The fact that they're outside, I think Joan, made a good point, that there is less risk with them outside. You still have the gathering before and after that certainly could stress the system. But
I think the one downside is if you don't do spring sports now, you can't do them until spring.
Exactly.
I mean, if they don't do it October and November, you can't do softball in December, January, February.
You do have, once the gym is back, you do have the batting cages, I believe, in the gym.
Oh.
And they're going to GRV in the forest or Windsor. I mean, there are places to go.
Yeah. Well, those are the things, again, we can't control, and I think we've addressed to the public through the dialogue. Those are some real issues. I think we need support from the public if we're going to continue to move forward. We can't have the kids now following protocols and these programs going all over the place.
Well, we are at the whim of the parents. If they decide to take their kids wherever they want,
and
then they turn around 3 weeks later and we have 200 contact tracings we're doing.
Yep.
The school, whatever building that kid is in is going to be closed.
Yep.
And they're going to be 100% virtual. We've seen that at how many schools across the nation already. I mean, we've already had one death in Waunakee because of a kid playing on a traveling team this summer. I mean, it's not like it's not real. We just don't, it's just going to keep happening.
Well, the pressure of it too is, and I think about this when our teams are going to state here. How many people are going to wait to get a COVID test if they're not feeling well until after they play? It's, you know, when you get to a certain point. I mean, I'm just gonna say it, athletics means a ton to people around the country. It's not just Waunakee. There's, you know, in Iowa, my hometown, their football team quarantined the whole team for 2 weeks. That's 70 some people, you know, I mean, and they were in school, so it was probably hundreds of people by the time it spread. I don't have a problem with them continuing. What I'm uncomfortable about is WIA saying you had 5, now you have 15, you know, and I know they say that they're not going to make any changes, but, you know, we are in mid-October. Give them another 5 days, you know, and get done with it, and put in limits on open gyms. But, yeah, I mean, we're doing the same thing with education as we're doing this. They're not playing the games, they can't play games. The responsibility's on their coaches. Aaron and Randy have told them what they need to do. It comes back on them. You know, they all have their own field pretty much. Soccer, football, you know. So it's not about mixing, it's just times. I make a motion that we, you know, reduce the number of contact days to 5 for the rest of the year. So football would get another 5, and soccer. And what's the end date on these?
So what I've told, my message to the coaches is, any contact days coming up now would need to be completed prior to the start of the winter sports seasons, because I'm not going to have softball contact days going on when girls basketball season's supposed to start.
When is this?
So girls basketball would start November 16th. So they have approximately a month to get those days in, or like if you see how kind of Tammy Rademacher has set up softball, where she kind of split them already between October and March. Just because then it's kind of nice to get a couple in now to see those kids, and then before the start of now that their season's pushed back to starting April 19th, they can get a couple days in March together to work on some stuff, and then have their season start in April.
So to get things moving, I guess I'll make a motion to approve an additional, through WIA rules, another 5 contact days ending, and I would even say 3 weeks out, would be the week before your anticipated date, but
For which sports, Brian?
I have no problem with any of them.
Go all the way.
You know, I trust Aaron to work it out with the coaches so they're not on top of one another, and everything gets clean, but.
So from boys soccer, football, volleyball, they'd be 5. Basketball and wrestling, they would have 5, and then baseball through track and field they'd each have 5 that they can deal with this fall.
This fall.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Discussion on the motion?
Nothing's really precluding us from coming back in later and giving them more days, right?
No, the WIA has given them those days.
Sure. What I would say is, as we start to look at these things, that was part of, I think, what at least process I was following was, as we bring these pieces back, particularly as we are still in these different models of instruction, that those come back to the board as far as part of a reopening decision. So part of the reopening then would be, if this motion passed, it would allow then for those 5 days. That would mean, per WIAA, soccer, football, volleyball would each have days left. The other ones, they have what's allotted to them. And if there was a balance, that could be something, as Mike said, could be brought back for future consideration at a point in time down the line.
Can I ask a question, Brian?
Yeah.
So when you said that their contact days would be done 3 weeks out, so that means all sports would have to be done the week before
I just,
girls back, like that start date? I just want to make sure I'm clear as to when you're.
I have no
part of the
problem
motion,
really
Bob?
on your end date, as long as they're not overlapping.
Okay.
I really don't,
So there is no date?
no.
So do you want to restate that motion?
Yeah, a motion to allow the fall, what's that?
The fall,
Okay.
All the sports
Procedure?
up there, 5 contact days to finish by November
But
16th.
we already have motion and seconded, so I don't think we just wash that off.
no,
So
you have
can we
to
amend it?
Okay.
But your current motion is to allow 5 days for all the sports up there.
Yeah,
So now you want to set a date limit on it.
no, I don't want to set a date.
Oh, okay.
I initially
It's
brought that
okay.
up at the
So we're at 5 contact days.
5 contact
For
days
everybody on the
for
list.
everybody on that list.
and I will leave
Can you
it to Aaron
complete it
to
this fall?
organize that.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Fine.
All those opposed?
Nay.
So there was 1 no.
Okay.
So that handles both of those
That
issues?
handles what we have for those, yes. Is there anything else, Aaron, that we needed?
No, I think that's the major points.
Did we handle the open gym?
Yeah,
I think what we gave is we didn't approve their open gym, we approved them for 5
Contact
contact
days,
days.
period. That's it.
Aaron, are you going to address
Open gym, you have-
non-athletics?
Open gym was not part of it. Yeah, they were given 5 contact days was the motion. Is that correct?
that's right, but are they still gonna have open gyms, is that?
And at this point, that
Or are
wasn't
you just
part of the
gonna limit
motion.
That was not part of the motion.
No, it wasn't.
So that's, yeah.
To me, I would say that wasn't, we were going to need to, that wasn't, I wasn't looking, that's a separate motion if we want to look at it.
No, I mean, some of the thing, I'm like, I trust Aaron to make the right call on some of this stuff, right?
I agree.
But I also don't think having 3 open gyms a week is smart.
The open gym is a much more open concept. The contact days are very much more under a contained procedure. So if that's a piece that's kind of an important part for this, then I think you move forward with the contact days and then they can choose how they use it.
Any further discussion or motions on this subject? Then we'll move on to item 10D, update on the flu vaccination clinic. Basically, what's happening is I'm working with WNC, some nurses from the medical committee and stuff, and we're setting up a flu vaccine clinic. It's going to happen at the high school October 24th on a Saturday. We've already got set up with Dane County Health to give us the vaccine. We're trying to get a private provider to provide vaccines so that we can give it to people other than those that Dane County will allow us to give it to, which is Dane County will only give vaccine to people who are uninsured or on Badger Care. That's the funding mechanism. So we're trying to find a way to give it to people who are insured, but that requires us to bring in some form of a pharmacy. Hy-Vee unfortunately has all their vans booked, but we're trying to find another third-party provider. Waunakee EMS is going to be involved, it looks like, providing more people. We have roughly 4 nurses already committed to being there to do the vaccinations, but we're probably going to need about 20 regular volunteers to help handle traffic, the paperwork and stuff like that. So if any board member feels like being busy on October 24th, you can join us. And it's going to be at the entrance where they hand out the food from Topper for people when they're buying their meals. We're going to be using that same area. We should have final setup on all the logistics by this Friday so that the school district can contact everybody and WNC can contact their client database. And that's about it unless someone has questions. Then we'll move on to committee reports. The first one's the Medical Advisory Ad Hoc Committee. Basically, the minutes are there. I'm sure you've all had fun hearing the results of those minutes already, so unless there's any questions, we can move on to the Diversity, Equity, Inclusive Ad Hoc Committee, which had 2 meetings since our last meeting. Is there anything?
I wouldn't really go into great detail on either of them. We kind of just spent some time doing ground rules, figuring out how to have an efficient meeting, what we're doing. Kind of broke out into a couple things that'll be coming back into the future, specifically regarding some requests the committee might have of the full board, but issues aren't really right with that yet, so I'll leave it off. The committee did draft basically a self-mission statement, which I think more or less mirrors what the board already approved last month anyway. That's included in the board book, so I don't think I'll recite it here. That's pretty much it.
Are there any questions, comments? Then we'll move on to the administrative reports, and the first one is the third Friday count.
In your packet, you will find information with regards to the third Friday count. I believe that Steve sent out an email also to the board to that effect. What we saw this year was the third Friday count is our one point in time in the fall where we do our count for revenue cap that you'll then be using as you move into the annual meeting and setting the levy. What we are seeing is a change of about 80 students. That's a combination, that's a head count of our students that we have in front of us in September, in the third Friday in September. Some interesting pieces to note. We did have an increase of +10 in open enrollment in, so people who chose to move in from when we compare that to last September. But we also had an increase of 23 open enrollments out. So I'm assuming some of those who chose some of the virtual charters or some of the other options in that area. But our net loss was 80 kids, so that could have been anyone who chose homeschooling, a private school, moved out of the district, etc. So obviously that does have a piece that's going to be, that impacts us on a budgetary level. We're having some conversations around that administratively, and that will be a piece that will come back through the budget committee and the board in our subsequent weeks, particularly as we get into setting our levy at the end of the month on October 26th. But I think what we had projected early on was we figured between 80 and 100 kids, and what we actualized was a reduction of about 80 students. Talking to some of my colleagues around the Dane County area, this seems to be relatively similar to what other districts have experienced with regards to their shifts in enrollment. From percentage basis, I would say it's similar to DeForest, Middleton, Sun Prairie, some of the others that we've had some conversations with. Certainly not the direction we want to be heading, but definitely the place that we are at the moment. And then this will be a piece that impacts us as we move forward, because this count stays with us through the 3-year cycle of the revenue cap. So we'll be talking more about that at a subsequent meeting, but wanted to bring to you really what our enrollment third Friday count numbers were.
Any questions?
Certainly not as bad as Madison, so they lost over 1,000, which is about 4% of their student population.
Okay, then we'll move to, there's a co-curricular club request. Oh, sorry, yeah, skipped over it.
This is just an update to the board. We have Annie and I have been working on some communications with regards to the referendum effort. I copied you on a video that we did for last week. We have another one, actually 2 more that we're looking to move out in the next few weeks. In your packet at your seat, you will also see another mock-up of a flyer that we are looking to mail out to the community. And so this will be a piece. There's some pieces on here that we are going to edit as Annie and I and Steve Summers have looked at it. There's a few language pieces that we're going to, we feel we can clarify. But this is generally the draft of what we are looking to try to communicate. If there's any thoughts that anybody has this evening, we certainly welcome those. Otherwise, I would say probably by the end of the day tomorrow to let us know if there's some things that you would see that you'd like clarified. That we're trying to show a message of really the board's commitment that these dollars would be levied on either side, either Fund 10 or Fund 39, depending on if the referendum were approved or not. And then just showing what some of the examples of the expenditures are, and again, reiterating what the ballot language is, etc. So this is a piece that we wanted to just get in front of you, but in the coming days, we will be finalizing it. We'll most likely work with Minuteman printers again in town, and then it would be something that we would have delivered out again to all of our mailboxes. A question that I would like to just pose this evening was, obviously our efforts have been primarily to do mailings, emails, videos, pieces that we've sent out. We had an article in the paper last week. I know, Dave, you had talked about should we be doing a public forum type thing or a Zoom type forum. I guess I'm open to what the thoughts of the board are, if you would like to do that, and if so, timing for when we would like that to happen.
I mean, I made the suggestion because every other referendum, we've always had a public forum, if not multiples. And it seems we should allow people to ask questions in some interactive format. So doing a Zoom where, we can get up to 1,000 people on a Zoom call, which is crazy, but I don't think you'll get 1,000 people any more than we got them to show up for all the other public referendums. But I do think we need to give people a chance to ask.
Is voting happening? Voting's happening right now. People are sending in.
October 20th.
Yeah. Some people already have.
If by absentee, yes.
Absentee voting is already.
So I would think something either end of next week would probably be about a week and a half out from the election. 2 weeks out. I saw some head nodding.
I think it's got to be sooner than that.
If anything, can we just own the responsibility for stuff like this going out? Because, I mean, I saw some people get cranky about the relatively minimal amount that was spent on sending out mailers. And I know we know it's minimal enough amount that Randy doesn't need approval from the board to send out something that costs $2,300 or whatever. But I would just make a motion that we actually acknowledge that we're directing that, so it's not coming back as blowback on administration. It's the board sending this out. I don't like how other districts seem to just kick the can to administration and let them take the heat. If we're spending $2,300 on something, we should own that. And I support doing that.
Send out the mailing.
And I'll take Mike as a second.
There you go, second.
And by the way, the articulation of this I thought was really good. I had a couple phone calls that I felt the first one was missing. I mean, they just felt it was too condensed, and so I tried to answer the questions, but
I think the
really
biggest
nice
question is
job
what's it
visualizing.
being spent on, and the bulletin. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
Do we want to put a limit?
Thank you, Mike, for doing that. Do you want to do
If we're going to have the forum, could we, is it inappropriate to have a time limit, say 45-minute forum
I would.
for an hour?
I would say an hour, hour and a half, but
I mean, how many questions can you really ask about this?
I mean, most people are going to ask.
I hate to have, I hate to first say it's for 90 minutes, someone tunes in at the 90th minute and it's gone, because no one's tuned in.
If we were going to do it next week, I would, your annual meeting's on Monday. Tuesday's probably our best day, because that's fall break at the end of the week, Thursday, Friday. So you can either do Tuesday or Wednesday, but Tuesday would interfere with equity unless we did it like 7 or 7:30 or something like that. Or you push to the last week in October, which I think is, to your point, it gets late.
I don't think doing it at 7 o'clock is a bad time. People have already had dinner and they're done. They've already got home from work.
It impacts equity a bit, Mike, is that?
I don't need to attend, that's fine.
So if we did it at like 7 o'clock on the 20th? Sure. Does that work?
What is the 20th? Is that Tuesday?
I think you got to do it on Tuesday, because if you start opening up the polls on the 20th, you know, and if people have questions, you know, about what this is, at least it gives them an opportunity to talk about it, so.
Yep, we'll get it out. So we'll do it at 7 o'clock on the 20th.
Anything else on the referendum?
No, I mean, just wanted to give you an update. We'll be continuing to move those pieces forward. So thank you.
Now, co-curricular club requests. We have a request from the Dreamers Club to move the advisor to a paid position, which would be the 2.5% of base, which is roughly $1,000. I believe they also added $1,000 for costs of contact and everything like that.
I think those pieces are, I think the biggest piece here is the pay aspect of it, and the other pieces that we can address through our budget. So we're just asking for the pay for the advisor. This was, our process has always been that a group has to be in process for 3 years. This was actually a group that had been in process, then went through their formal piece. The co-curricular committee and the board agreed last year that it was approved, and then after another year they could come back for pay.
Is there a policy that requires waiting a specific number of years, or is that just a practice?
I believe it's actually on our application for a group as it moves
For
forward,
new clubs.
which I think is part of our process.
It's part of the process to make sure that it's going to survive over several years.
It's
We've
practice,
had a
so
number
it's
of
not
them that
policy.
We've
Yeah,
had
it's
some that have
practice.
started and then they didn't make it after another year.
Okay.
And so when was it actually founded?
I think actually,
4 years ago?
Okay.
I move approval of the recommendation as stated.
Second. Jack. Any discussion?
Do you know how
All
many?
those in favor say aye.
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you know how many students are involved in this?
There was a list, I thought.
No, that was from last
That was
year,
from last
That was
year.
from last year.
but I would say it's probably about the same.
And I'm just going to pick on you from high school. How many are normally part of Lasonia Doors? Any clue?
To be honest with you, I don't remember.
That's fine.
It's been 2 years.
15 or
I
20
don't
probably.
know.
Okay.
They had 15 last year.
Yeah, that was my guess.
Call the vote.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, that takes us to announcements.
Yep, a few different things. National Merit Scholarship Program. Thomas Hughes has been named National Merit semifinalist. We also had commended students, Ellis Feaster, Shreya Kata, and Aiden Niermeyer. So congratulations to those students. That's excellent recognition for their achievement. And also in your packet at your seat, you will see that Anna Dotzler was recognized in the WIAA Scholar Athlete Testimonial as part of the girls golf program. So as you can see in there about the benefits of being a scholar athlete, Anna was recognized, and her statement very appropriately was included. Thank you to those students, and congratulations to those students for their hard work.
That takes us on to the consent agenda, where we can either vote it all up or down at once, or anything can be broken out.
I would vote it together, but I would actually personally recognize Kathy and Lon Bartling, you know, in our gifts for the rhythm, the Northridge Church for giving us the face coverings, J.P. Cullen for putting in the concrete for the bench, Craig Kozinski for setting up the scholarship, and Bo donation approval for the memorial, Norm Biles Memorial Bench.
Why do we approve these things after concrete has already been installed? I mean, if we don't approve, is it coming out? No.
I think that's just
It's a timing issue.
it was a timing that they were just kind of identifying them as a gift. And then I think that's when it came through and processed through our office.
And it gives us a chance to acknowledge the donors.
Sure.
And we appreciate all the donors that
Exactly.
And we actually
supported
did
our
approve the memorial,
education.
but
I was gonna say, I thought we did,
Before
and
it
we
happened.
recognized Jenna Whalen for just getting that set up. It was just kind of an impromptu thing that someone did, and it caught fire, and they just had people donating out of nowhere, so it was great.
so is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the consent agenda in its entirety.
Second?
Second.
Oh, okay, Jack, second.
I thought you were second.
Oh, asking for
Jack did approve it already, so Mike was the second?
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, we can do that.
We can do that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And take us on to board business, there's no board correspondence. And you have future meetings.
Future meetings, one of the things that Steve has requested is a budget committee meeting, and I believe he just needs it. And obviously, we have a special meeting on the 26th to review the tax levy, so it needs to be at a point before that. We could potentially do it. And that the special meeting to set the levy is at 6 o'clock.
Well, he said he could have it before or after the annual meeting.
Before or after.
So before would be this week
No,
sometime.
annual meeting's next.
Meaning like annual meeting's at 7.
That's
so
at
he could have it
7
at 6.
next Monday.
Oh, he could do it.
Like at 6 o'clock that day.
Oh, okay, that's what he meant. All right, thank you.
I can't. I've got a birthday for a grandson.
Would the budget committee be able to meet after the annual meeting?
Yeah.
So the immediate.
I'm available on the 21st. It's a Wednesday.
So you're not available right after the annual meeting, Jack?
So the annual meeting's at 7, that probably is about 45 minutes, so
Yeah.
by 8 o'clock. That's what I think is that what Steve was recommending?
Yes.
Yeah.
That'd be fine with me.
Does
I
that
could do
work,
it.
Jack? That would work,
After
Jack?
that,
That works.
yeah.
So 8 o'clock on the 19th, right after the annual meeting. That's all I need.
So is that between 8 and midnight, or is it?
I think it'll be quicker than that. I think that'll be.
I'm just trying to figure out, budget my
Will
time.
he be here in person, or are we going to do it virtual with him?
I'll probably Zoom in. No, he won't be here in person.
Is that the only meeting you needed?
That's all I need.
Okay.
Motion to approve,
No,
or
don't we have to approve a different meeting time for the 9th?
For the night? No, because we're still meeting at 6.
We're still, well, the 9th, what I will do is that we will have a regular meeting.
At
You're
7?
correct. We would not have closed session at 6. We would
Okay.
do the medical advisory committee at 6, and then our general board meeting, starting with closed session, will start at 7.
At
Just like-
7,
Just
yeah.
like we did tonight.
so do we have to make a motion to change
Yeah,
that?
Well, if we
or-
need to, because that's not a
Okay,
special
good.
meeting. I think
That's
we're
fine.
okay.
I'll make sure.
Any further, anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
And I see a second from Mark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Jack.